All right, I'd like to call this Monday, November 18th, School Committee Business Meeting to order. Mrs. Yell, will you take the roll, please?
Mayor Reardon.
I am here.
Sarah Hall.
Here.
Brian Callahan.
Here.
Brianna Higgins. Kathleen Shaw.
Here.
Juliet Walker.
Present.
Andrew Boger.
All right, can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Hall.
Okay, so seeing we have no public comment, we'll go on to the consent agenda. If you're ready, Mr. Callahan?
Yep.
Start with warrants.
All right. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $740,782.95 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
All in favor?
Can we discuss?
Oh,
Do you know, that's really high. That's like about 300,000 more than usual. Do you know any reason why? Or?
No, I do not.
Okay.
But yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Superintendent?
want to make any more inquiries?
So warrant 8136 is 728,000 and A warrant is 12,000.
I think one of them is the Irish waste that's in that one.
Okay.
That would
Here we go. Yes. No, that's not that right number though. No, I'm sorry. I do not know.
But you said there's not a district in there that's...
I believe so, yep.
I'll pass it around.
Yeah,
It's
that's fine.
under circuit breaker,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
211. 211.
In that case, could we table it, postpone the vote until we've all seen the warrant?
Sure.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we'll come back to that maybe when we get to subcommittees. If you could just remember we'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be able to go through this whole thing by then.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, I think we're gonna pass it around,
Sure.
and maybe by then everyone will have had a chance to look it over, and we can approve the warrant then.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so we're gonna move on to the minutes from the November 4th meeting. That was our last meeting. Were there any corrections to the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the November 4th minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
You weren't there. Okay, Maddie, we're ready for the student representative report.
So in Bresnahan news, the Bresnahan Community Service Club is up and running with almost 40 third grade participants. Earlier this month, they met at the school with representatives from Our Neighbors Table to learn how they can help address food insecurities in our community. Sorry. The Bresnahan Community Service Club is led by NHS sophomore Logan McKnight and supported by third grade teacher Mariana Gasparo. We are wrapping up our first session of Clipper courses. Sign-ups for the next session will be communicated to families via weekly Wednesday. We are proud to have about 115 students benefiting from our free after-school programming. Second graders are preparing for their Macy's Day Parade next Tuesday. After reading the book Balloons Over Broadway and discussing traditions that families and communities have, students are working hard to celebrate their own float representing traditions that they cherish. Second grade families are invited to attend and watch the parade. In Mullen news, Mullen students had the second Discovery Friday on the 15th and will have one on the 22nd. This month's Discovery activity focuses on robotics and coding. We had high school students from the robotics club join in to lead and work with our 4th grade and 5th grade students. We've noticed these Fridays give students a chance to shine and show their strength in different ways. Mullen is having a fall food and toiletry drive to benefit Pettingale House and Newbury Food Pantry. Second step lesson begin this week, December 2nd. The first unit is empathy and skills for learning. And then in high school news, this past weekend, the NHS music teachers brought 8 musicians to audition for the Northeastern District Senior Band, Chorus, and Orchestra Festivals. 5 of our students were accepted and will perform in a concert along with the best musicians from 70 area schools. Congratulations to Josh Burrell, Evan Legou, Sam Parr, Max Petrowski, and Cedar Schumacher. On behalf of Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Wolf, and the entire NHS staff, their music teachers, Risa Inicachario, Kathy Shepard, and Steve Cohen, congratulate these fantastic student musicians and their parents. Last Thursday, Katie Greer spent the day with the juniors. Working with groups of about 40 students at a time, she helped them reflect on their social media habits, while also learning of the dangers and legal implications that have resulted from inappropriate use of cellular devices. Her workshop supported instructions and dialogues teachers have facilitated with grade 11 students around the book Accountable by Daska Slater. If you did not have a chance to see The Play That Goes Wrong this past weekend, there are 3 more showings at the high school this Thursday and Friday at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m. Congratulations to student athletes who signed their letters of intent last week to the schools they've accepted. Reese Bromby at UMass Amherst for lacrosse, Lucy Buchmeyer at Washington and Lee University for track, Edward Karen at St. Lawrence for football, GRT, Bates College for field hockey, Alex Greenblatt at Marist University for soccer, Brian Lucy at St. Anselm's for lacrosse, Evan Lukens at Roger Williams for baseball, and Devin Stroop at the U.S. Naval Academy for track. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Maddie.
Good job.
I did go see The Play That Goes Wrong last weekend. You did too, right? It's so fun. You definitely want to check it out.
Good luck.
So we're going to get an update on the high school water heater.
Yes.
Are you going to do that? Or
Mr. McSweeney will.
Mr. McSweeney, so we'll have you just come right up to the mic here.
As school committee recalls, last week, I sent out an email regarding the water heater, and Mr. McSweeney and his team looked for a lot of temporary solutions for that, exhausted that, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to replace that water heater, and I just wanted to update the school committee on that.
So right now, the water heater is a 20-year-old, 750-gallon gas-fired hot water heater. The failure was in the internal combustion chamber leaked and filled full of water. So the entire chamber full of water, the firing down, the electronics, everything got destroyed. There's no salvage. There's no fixing it again. It's a 20-year-old hot water heater. So we've been working with one of our construction vendors on finding a replacement, looking at any alternatives we have to get something going in the interim, and there just isn't anything. Unfortunately, trying to get an external boiler, some post-heating trailers, you can put them on side. To get that done, we still need all the health codes and plumbing codes. Just wasn't an option. So again, working with our vendor, we have a replacement cost. We just got that cost about an hour ago. It's about $160,000 to replace this hot water heater. And that is a full, come in, tear out the old boiler, put in the new one, pipe it, all the inspections, all the regulatory requirements that's going to be needed for it, and removal of the old boiler. So I'm sure a lot of you haven't been down to the boiler room, but it's actually down below grade, and it's a regular 32-inch doorway getting down there. And the one that's down there is a 750-gallon tank. So you can imagine getting that old one out is not going to be an easy task. So I'm sure a lot of the cost involved with this is the removal and installation of the new one, a lot of the labor cost. The good news is that there is a new boiler in stock, and we can get it here in about a day or two. And they're looking at 3 days for install, removal and install the new one. So once we give them the go-ahead, it'll be a pretty fast process. And again, thanks to my team, maintenance guys, and everybody, we've worked hard on this and do what we can.
Question for, I don't know, how old was this building? Is it 20 years? Is the rest of the renovation?
Yeah, and the renovation was early 2000.
Probably
2002. Everything that all the documentation I'm seeing is from 2000.
Okay. Was this in the list of things that needed to get updated?
It was not.
Okay.
We've been looking at the boilers, the chillers, and a lot of the other mechanical systems. There was no indication that the system was going to fail.
Okay.
usually you might see some brown water, some staining, some things, some inefficiencies with the boilers, or not getting hot water out of them. We just didn't see any of that, so it's not something that we could anticipate or foresee, unfortunately.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Yeah, it kind of strikes me that it's interesting that it's in a place that's kind of inaccessible. That reminds me of like Mike Mulligan, do we build a building around the water?
I believe that's essentially what they did. I mean, we come in, the ramp,
Yeah.
down to, I think that was brought in, and then the sheet rock walls were
Yeah, that's what
kind
I'm
of around it,
thinking,
so,
It's
unfortunately.
unfortunate, yeah.
Will there be a problem getting the new one?
No, so the new ones are now a lot smaller, a lot more efficient as well. So it's not going to be a giant kind of tank style, kind of like in your house, right? You used to have the old, 40-gallon stand-up cylinder hot water heaters. Well, this one that's down there now is on the same premise, just obviously a lot bigger. And the new ones, they're about the size of this podium here, small suitcase size. So they'll come in and they'll be able to pull it right through the door and drop it down into the space.
So it's an on-demand?
Excuse me?
It's an on-demand water heater instead of a holding tank
Yes.
style?
Like tankless.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
What's the typical lifespan, like, was 20 years what it was, or what?
20 to 25 years is what you can get out of a commercial hot water heater, yes.
How old the new ones?
Probably about the same. Yeah.
So do you have any
So our next,
information about
well, I think our next
Funding.
steps, Ms. McSweeney
So,
and I go to,
and normally in a project
City
this
council.
size, with this kind of money, we'd be looking at putting this out to bid and getting 3 quotes and working with, but because of the situation where it is the domestic hot water heater, we're gonna be looking to procure this under the emergency protocols through the mass purchasing.
Yeah, I guess that was my question, is how disruptive is this? I mean, I don't want to be the person who says, well, the kids can have cold showers. I'm just curious, like, is it the food, is it?
So in the kitchen, we actually have a booster unit in there, so they still have the 140-degree water they need.
Oh, good.
For their pot washing and that kind of thing. And there is some hot water up in the science labs, but for the most part, right now, our bathrooms and locker rooms do not have hot water.
nurse's office.
I guess my only thing I'd bring up is that we just had to do we had an elevator fail at the library, so we just kind of went through this process with the city council. And I know in that, we make sure the department kind of exhausts all of their funding first before we go and try to use free cash for something like this. So in my head, I'm just speaking for myself, but also I'm trying to think ahead of what the city council is going to say, is that I would argue that school choice is that free cash for the school district. So if we don't have that money in there, I would say that we could do this. Otherwise, I think we probably could do an emergency vote to have that money used for this right now here. I think school choice, we have it there in case of that emergency situation. And I guess we usually think of that as a student coming into the district, which again, if we used it for this and then that happened, we'd still have to go to city council anyways at some point. But at least we would have said we've exhausted all of the department funds for it. I mean, that's just where my head's at on that. But I don't know what everyone else thinks. But I don't know what's in school choice right now off the top of my head. So
I just would wanna, if we're gonna do that, I just wanna make sure it would be in compliance with school choice, before I'll check with, the attorneys.
okay, yeah, that might be.
This reminds me similar to with the elevator at the high school last year when it was not operational. We had to go to city council for that. So I just want to make sure that we're in compliance with school choice, that even though it is broad, but it has to benefit like students, and that's why when we were going out utilizing school choice for the safety and the upgrades, it definitely tied in to the mission of what, school choice, making sure the environment is a safe place. So that would be my only piece.
But if we needed to, we could have an emergency meeting and do that vote on a Zoom, right?
Yeah, we could do the same
Yeah.
thing, yeah. I mean, I still think we should go in front of city council, just to make them aware that we need a water heater for high school.
Yeah, if I could just add to that thought process, I mean, I agree that school choice is a lot like free, it's a little different than free cash in that it is, my view, it is supposed to be intended to support student-specific services that we may, like you said, like you alluded to, if students come in that add to the cost of what we can provide, we have an unexpected influx of students or students with certain needs, means that we can't provide to. I get a little bit concerned about using it for facilities, but obviously, you know, if that's where the council ends up, I can understand then having a decision about that on our end, but, you know, this is a facility of the city, not just the high school. I mean, we use it for a lot of city functions as well, so to me, I feel like I would appreciate that direction versus defaulting to school choice.
Well, just anticipating some of those potential questions, could you ballpark the difference that it might be, meaning getting it as quickly as possible as opposed to in a normal process when you went out to bid?
So if we were to go to bid, we'd probably be looking at close to a month. By the time we get all the documentations and the engineering, the bid specs and everything, and got it all together with an engineering firm, and we're able to get it out, and we put it out to bid on the, for the central register and everything. It's, you know, 2-week process for that, and then signing contracts, we'd be looking at roughly over a month to get all that done. And that's even assuming that the boiler will still be in stock and ready to roll.
Sure, so that's the time schedule, which, you know, we want to do this right away, but in terms of cost, the differential potentially, I mean, I'm not holding you to it, I'm just curious the scale of it.
It's probably going to roughly be about the same. I mean, it could be.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was,
$5,000 or $10,000.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't see a huge savings by trying to put it out.
excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. So we'll expect a follow-up from you, Superintendent?
Yeah, we'll reach out tomorrow.
MCAS. Okay, we're ready for MCAS presentations. You want to kick it off?
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of our teachers, teacher leaders, principals, Dr. Abrams, Ms. Furlong. All of this work has been going on, I think, since September. Really analyzing, taking a real deep dive into the MCAS scores, and then I think also a lot of input and feedback by the teachers and the coaches that are here tonight on how to do an MCAS presentation that's informative. So as you see, you have a detailed booklet as part of your packet, but also really communicating to the community on, you know, some of the positive things that are coming out of the MCAS and some of the areas of growth. And I think the team has done a great job in really taking a lot of the data for this presentation tonight. So once again, I just want to thank them for all of their hard work, all the teachers that are here, and principals may not be up presenting, but they all had a great role in assisting us. So no further ado, Assistant Superintendent Lisa Furlong and Dr. Abrams.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for giving us a little bit of extra time. I came in front of the school committee, I think, in September when the MCAS scores were just released, just asking for an opportunity for the district to step back, rebuild our vertical data team, take a different approach to how we dive into the data. And you can kind of see sitting out in the audience, this is our multidisciplinary, multi-grade team of people. We've met multiple times together as a large group and at the school level group. So what we have to present to you tonight is really going to focus in on the school level. It will probably be about 15 minutes per school level, and then if you have any questions. And just to give you a little bit of background, when we started looking at the MCAS, we were looking at really 3 different levels. We look at the MCAS from a district perspective, where we're thinking about the accountability data, we're thinking about student growth percentiles as a district, student achievement as a district, and how our subgroups are doing K to 12, or in this case of the MCAS, testing starts at 3rd grade. At each level, the building administrators, the principals are also looking at the MCAS data, and they're asking questions around the same big categories, but the questions are a little bit different. So they're looking at their school accountability data. Are they meeting their targets, for example, at the high school with graduation, across all of our schools with attendance? Again, looking at student growth, looking at achievement and populations. And just as background for people who may be watching, a growth score indicates how a young person has grown from one year to the next based on similar peers, as opposed to the achievement score, which is the actual sort of set score that you got on the test. So that will probably come up as you go through. If there's questions about vocabulary, let us know.
Thank you. So Mrs. Furlong talked a little bit about how the district and administrators look at data and how they question the data. And I'm really going to talk about how teachers look at the data and question the data. I think the first point I want to make is that this doesn't happen in isolation. It's already been mentioned twice. But we really looked at it as a team this year. And we had a robust team of teachers, coaches, administrators, district level people who met several times to really begin to look at and question the data. One thing that I like to liken it to is kind of like a Russian doll, a Russian nesting doll. I brought one in that a student brought me many years ago. And it's really, even though we all have our place in it, it's really when we come together as a team that we can impact student learning. You know, as teachers, when we look at the MCAS data, we look at some of that big picture stuff. We look at achievement levels. We look at growth levels. We like to break down some of the subgroups and look at the high needs of the L populations, et cetera. But I think as teachers, where we really have fun and we really dig into the data is when we look at item analysis. Now, item analysis allows us as a team to look at our standards. Where are our students doing well with the curriculum? Where are they doing well with the skills we're teaching them? And then also where we can grow as a district in terms of that content or that skill. And really when we look at it as a team, and you'll see this as the different schools present, it's really about coming up with action steps in which we can strategize about how we can have greater impact on student learning in the individual class level. And that's really, as teachers, what we strive to do.
So like we said, it was important to us, I think, to take a little bit of extra time and ensure that the people who are having these conversations were going to be the ones who are closest to the data, closest in front of the students, most experienced with the curriculum resources that we're using, the assessment tools that we're using, and we're able to speak to what are the instructional strategies you're using in an area that, for example, we have a strength. Can we do more with that? Or a growth area, what do you think is missing and how can we better understand it? In addition to working with the group of people who you see out here, we stepped it down so it's like a trainer models. We have a very strong instructional leadership team amongst Newburyport teachers at the high school. They're called the ILTs, instructional leaders. At the other schools, they're called CELs, curriculum educational leaders. Along with our coaches, Dr. Abrams and myself, we have worked with every group of teacher across the district who is in a testing area. And we did decide for this particular group, they represent as the tested areas for MCAS right now, but our vertical team of data is going to sort of expand into different areas as we get ourselves organized. So what follows is going to be, we're going to come up, we'll start with the high school, then the middle, the elementary schools will present together as a 3 through 8. And what they're going to be talking to you about is we structured it around strengths and weaknesses, or flows and grows, as you often see from DESE. It's going to take each school a little bit of time to present because we do have 3 subject areas. We are looking at 3 grade level areas, and we want to give you a sense of here's some of the questions that we're asking in regards to science, math, or ELA, and here are some of the action steps we're taking. But I think what you will see is some through line information, some vertical alignment in terms of things that we think across the district we can do some work on, or areas that we've had some growth, and then pockets of within each school level areas that they're going to work on specifically. We're not going to be presenting the actual MCAS scores and data. This is really an analysis, mostly of the item analysis you'll see up here, the standards-based analysis, but you do have in your packets and is also posted online. And I do think I actually have hard copies of the actual report of the data. So I'm going to start. We're going to start with the high school, and I believe the whole high school team is going to come up with its goals.
So thank you for having us here tonight. And tonight I'm joined here with members of our instructional leadership team here at the high school. Over the past few years, we've worked to kind of shift from your more traditional department head structure that high schools typically have to an instructional leadership team model, which has really, I feel, from my end, has really kind of helped us really move our students forward and our teachers forward. So what I'd like to do first is introduce the members of our team who are here. We have Amanda Drugan, who is our instructional lead for special education. We have Megan Horst, who is our instructional lead for math. We have Melissa Farmer, who is our instructional lead for English, and Erin Hobbs, who is our instructional lead for science. And my role tonight really is to provide an overview of our Glows and Grows in general for the high school and the overarching actions that we're taking on across the school to address the areas that we recognize that we need to improve, which is really kind of the takeaways that we've had from doing the analysis of our MCAS results. The team who is here, they're going to actually give you greater specifics as to what that means in their respective areas in regards to standards that they recognize where we've kind of seen some lift from our students, but then also at the same time some areas that we know that we have to re-emphasize and focus our plans around this school year, which they've already started. So as far as our kind of general overview of the results, which you do have, I think, in your packets. So in regards to student achievement, we did stay similar in our achievement results for ELA, and we did have lower results in achievement for our science and math this past school year compared to prior school years. But I think an important place to also look at as well is our growth percentile rates, which we did exceed typical growth for both ELA and math this school year. So recognizing that even though our achievement results are lower, our students did, compared to their comparable cohort when they were in 8th grade, did much better from where they were. So that was an area that was a highlight for us in terms of a glow, but we do recognize that achievement is an area of focus for us. In some of the other categories that the high school is held accountable to, we did improve or exceeded targets for our graduation rate, extended engagement rate, and our dropout rate. We did increase, or we did meet expectation for chronic absenteeism, but it's important to note that we still have over a 10% of our students are chronically absent, so that's something that we continue to work on. And then we did increase students successfully completing advanced coursework, and an emphasis for us, which has been kind of our high needs population. So for students that are economically disadvantaged, we did increase there by 10%. Which has definitely been a focus for us, and a big piece of that is why we've been focusing on our Pathways program, because that really supports us in trying to make our upper level classes more accessible for all students. So as far as general actions the high school is taking on, one thing that our teacher leads did with their respective departmental areas as they were analyzing the results from this past summer is all of the teacher goals are all focused, they're focused on skills to support achievement and growth, especially as it relates to standards where they recognize our students did not perform as well, or if there have been a couple-year trends of some standards where students have struggled, and that's the emphasis of their goals, which you will hear about in a few minutes. Another step that we've been taking on in collaboration with the Knock Middle School is our instructional leads have partnered with the curriculum leads at the middle school where they've done some learning walks to kind of get a sense of what's happening in the classrooms in terms of common practices, but working to develop kind of professional development that can be aligned 6 through 12. But then another piece that's going to be an emphasis is really taking a look at the curriculum and working to vertically align it. Really kind of supporting the growth, not just at the middle school, but also at the high school. Now, one thing that we recognize as well, that is a place of focus for the high school. So we did shift a lot of our after-school meeting times for the emphasis of common planning, where teachers are coming together in their curriculum teams, they're looking at student work, and using that information to make decisions about what they're doing with upcoming lessons to impact student learning. Now, those meetings do happen twice a month, so we do recognize the need to figure out a way to increase common planning time happening at the high school, if anything, at least weekly, so that those meetings can even have greater impact. And then, as I said earlier, we received the Environmental Pathways Program last year through the state's innovation program, and we have, and actually Erin Hobbs doing a lot of work on this with we're applying for advanced manufacturing as well as health and social, healthcare and social assistance as the other one. And again, just really as a way of really working to expand more students accessing our advanced coursework. So to get into some specific as to how our teachers are engaging in teaching and learning cycles, I'm going to have Amanda Drugan come up and speak to that.
Thanks, Andy. All right, so in continuation of what Andy has said, some other steps really include refining teacher and learning cycles. So in the classroom, we're going to be incorporating more frequent common and formative assessments to support teachers developing reteach lessons. We're going to be using peer assessments systems to help teachers access student learning data and be able to access it more quickly, as well as assigning students in need of more intervention to what we call a clipper block, or in other schools, a flex period. We also plan to implement common close reading strategies across disciplines and expand that academic vocabulary beyond the 9th grade level, so focusing on that vocabulary in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade as well.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. And so those are really kind of the holistic approaches that we're taking across the building with all of our teachers in their common planning times, but then also really trying to make greater use of common assessments to more rapidly impact learning in the classroom. So now to really get down to the nitty-gritty in each of the core subject areas and really talk about the now what, how are we working with students to improve their success. We're going to have Melissa Farmer come up to talk about ELA.
Good evening. As Andy mentioned, we achieved or exceeded typical growth for all of our students, as well as our high needs and students with disabilities this year. And those growth numbers were really high. It was really a testament to our teachers identifying our students' areas of need and strategically targeting the development of their needed skills, as well as our students' hard work to improve. A couple of our achievement highlights in our GLOWs included explanatory writing comparing two texts, where we improved at a 6 percentage point level. I think this is partially due to the common assessments we've implemented that focus on this type of response to paired passages that we use throughout the year. Another achievement highlight was the standard that relates to analyzing the structure of texts, which was up overall 13 percentage points, which is really high. Our sophomore teachers last year targeted this skill with a project analyzing an author's use of nonlinear narrative and parallel plots, along with many other strategies we've implemented that we've kind of seen pay off with this standard. And then going to our rows, we still see needs in our writing, okay? Producing clear and coherent writing as appropriate to task, purpose, and audience, and particularly independently in a timed setting. So we'll see students produce and demonstrate skills to a certain level in the classroom, and then we'll see their MCAS essays, and maybe some students aren't performing at the same level we're seeing in the classroom maybe on the MCAS itself. So there can be a variety of reasons for that, but one thing we might do is start more practice with peeling back some of the scaffolding we provide within the classroom earlier, and giving them that independent practice. Another grow for us is analyzing complex texts, particularly poetry. We find that over the past 3 years or so, that's the genre that students have performed weakest, I guess, at in terms of several of our lowest performing questions will be linked to a poetry passage. And then our action steps. So what do we do with this information? So our teacher goals this year at grades 9 and 10 level, our student learning goal and our professional practice goal revolve around poetry. Poetry analysis, paired poems, and pairing poems also with other genres. And we are implementing pair assessment, as Amanda mentioned, as a tool for common formative and summative assessments, so they can see what this passage analysis might look like on the MCAS itself and have practice with that type of assessment. And another goal and skill we're working on is student reflection on their own writing, self-analysis of their skills, evaluating where and how they can level up. And we have a freshman portfolio that was implemented over the past couple of years that has been working to do that. And those are our main action steps.
Okay, we'll now have Megan Horst come up to talk about math.
Thank you guys for having me. So just like with English, our biggest blow is that we have really high typical SGP for all of our students, and then high typical growth for our low-income subgroup as well. And if you had walked through the halls for the last couple of years, in the morning after school during Clipper Block, our students were working hard at improving their math skills. I had the pleasure of teaching these students for 2 years, and they really put in the work. So I was very happy to see the amount of growth that they were able to make in those 2 years. Probability and statistics were definitely a highlight, as well as geometry. We increased in both of those standards, or in both of those subgroups. Our rows were in numbers and quantity. This one was a little bit interesting. There was a question that was in our constructive response that's generally a multiple choice question, so it was counting for 4 points instead of 1 point. And it definitely did its damage in terms of our number and quantity for sure. And then our algebra decreased 16 points. We're really putting a focus on spiraling our algebra into our geometry curriculum. We started that process last year, and we're going to continue looking at more and more ways that we can integrate algebra into our geometry courses, because otherwise the students go almost a whole year without seeing some of those standards, which is a little bit challenging, obviously, for them to pull back from there. The biggest thing that we saw, though, was the constructive responses. And so not only was there a 10% decrease, but those averages are already pretty low at 54% last year and then 44% this year. And so with our goal this year, we are really focusing on our mathematical practice number 3, which is to be able to construct a viable argument and critique the reasoning of others. And the way that we're going to attack this is in a couple of different ways. Through our professional growth goal, we are really doing a deep dive into the building thinking classrooms, and that's a common theme that you're going to see here K to 12 within our math classes. This new way of thinking is allowing more access points for students, so they look at a problem and they say, all right, how can I attack this? What entry point do I have to be able to think through this? And it's teaching the children to think rather than just kind of be rote memorizers. And in math, we need that ability to think, and in life, we need that ability to think. Like I said, we're gonna also increase spiral review, and then within our peer assessment tool, we're going to do more of these constructed responses so that students are answering these open-ended tasks on the computer in a mathematical way, which isn't as familiar for them as like typing out a response maybe. And then just with the other content areas, continuing to use that flipper block to really target those students that are struggling with certain standards and making sure that they're getting the support that they need.
And we'll now have Erin Hobbs come up to talk about biology.
Hi everybody. So I'm going to address our GROWs. We are looking at, when comparing groups, we're looking at achievement data for science, and some exciting stuff we saw was in constructed responses. From the last cohort to this past cohort, we saw a 19% increase in our constructed responses. That's the open response types of questions, and we've been working really hard as a department to improve student performance through all grades on this. We've been creating common rubrics around claim, evidence, and reasoning, and really practicing those written responses in class, and we were excited to see this change. In addition, we saw an increase in both ecology and evolution. We recognized a couple of years ago that evolution was an area of weakness. It was at the end of the school year and was slightly rushed, so we reevaluated our curriculum map and moved that to the beginning of the year and move it into our ecology unit or right next to it, and we were excited to see better performance on that. In addition, with evolution, some of the questions were focused more on the microscopic world versus the macroscopic, so more like bacteria and viruses. So we made sure we spent some more time focusing on the evolution of those organisms. We didn't see much change. So if we look at our GROWs and our molecules to organisms content or our heredity unit, and we do recognize after going through each of the questions that scientific questioning is something of concern for us that we want to improve. It's one of the science practices, and we recognize that we are going to work on this year by developing a common rubric and explicitly teach it at multiple points throughout the school year. So to address our big action step here is really focusing on the science practice of scientific questioning, but also increasing more formative assessments using PAIR so that we can intervene when a student isn't understanding the content and get them some reinforcements either in clipper block or during class time.
One thing to emphasize, I know you heard a few times use of the PAIR assessment. So one area that we recognize was where we've done a lot of work over the past couple of years of having common summative assessments. Those are large-scale assessments that teachers would review, but then would allow us to then make changes, but sometimes a little bit too late. And so the shift is really about getting to common formative assessments that happen with a lot more frequency and put students in kind of novel situations versus what they've been working on in class, so teachers can truly get a sense of the skill level of students and then plan future lessons based off of that information. And what's also nice about the PAIR assessment is that it allows teachers to actually assign standards to each of the questions. It also has item banks that have been vetted as well. So there are questions of high quality that can give us really great information about student performance across a unit based off of the skills teachers are working on with their kids. So that is our overview. So if there's any questions.
Questions? Let's go ahead. I have a comment and a couple of questions. So first, comment is on
writing, and so let me start with, I really appreciate this presentation. I think it's wonderful. It's a really fair analysis of your strengths and weaknesses, which I really appreciate. Specifically on the writing section, you mentioned students not performing on the MCAS the same as in the classroom, and you're going to work on removing scaffolds. My only concern on the framing of that it's not the same as MCAS versus the classroom, is that with the new ballot question that's passed, that likely is not going to get better, right? It's likely going to actually decline in performance because students won't be so motivated to actually write an essay sitting there. And so what's more important to me, and I'm sure you as well, is to be able to craft a well-structured argument independently, not in a timed setting, right? I don't think that's something that we all care about in our lives, is the timed setting part, but we do care about the independent part. So I really appreciate your focus on working to remove the scaffolds in class. I think that's exactly where you should go. It's, how do we start taking away the scaffolds that aren't going to be provided to you later on in life throughout the course of the year, but just, and I'm sure you won't do this, but just not to have the end goal be that MCAS score, but think about what are other ways that we're going to measure how well our students are doing in writing, because writing is so important, and without that common metric that students are actually going to be motivated to get a good score on, like how are we going to assess that?
So we absolutely have put more emphasis on our authentic assessment and on writing for authentic purposes. So for instance, right now, sophomores are in the middle of an op-ed unit where we are writing op-eds, opinion pieces on issues that we care about that we are targeting to submit for publication to, for instance, a newspaper. So that is absolutely something that we value more than MCAS performance. Yes. Sorry, but yes, there is a lot of overlap between the MCAS performance, the skills that are used to write the argument essay, right? But then there are some things that are different as well.
And we also, we saw that last year. We had a big literacy conference with all the literacy directors in the state. And one of the major points was that when we teach writing in the classroom, it's kind of authentic, right? The teachers, like your editor, you're giving them revisions. It's going back and we have this final beautiful piece. And then you go to the MCAS and all those are pulled away, right? We still want to have the practice, like an MCAS practice. The piece has to be in an hour. That's what your editor is saying. Let's get it done. Let's work that way. You bring that joy there. And that's really kind of the balance we're trying to achieve here. And it's the most important skill that we teach. I'm biased, and I shout that in all the rooftops. And we've seen some really good gains with our MCAS writing as well. Not having the heavy-duty MCAS threat might be a challenge, but the teachers, the way they do it in the classroom, it's authentic. They're sending it out to newspapers where, we're bringing it to live audiences. Last year, Mr. Gallagher had a 5th grade argument on should we have chocolate milk in the cafeteria or not, and the kids presented it to him.
Sold me.
And it was really authentic. Yeah, he sold you, but
yes, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The kids had good arguments both ways. But yeah, thank you.
Dr. Abrams, can I ask you one while you're up there?
Please.
Can you just talk about writing like K-12? Like, do we have a writing, do we have something that we focus on that's consistent throughout all the schools?
Yeah, so essentially we're, we focus on the three genres of writing in all the schools, right? We do narrative, we do informative, and we do argument writing. That is consistent 3 all the way through 12. We're kind of in the process of getting everyone a little more consistently on the same page with how we do that. For the most part, we have common assessments that are taught through the unit, 3 all the way up to 12. Melissa was just talking about our opinion piece. Same thing down in 4th grade right now. They're just finishing up informational writing, etc. We've had a little bit of, we're working on developing common strategies when we're writing workshop. We're kind of looking at some different, instructional techniques to bring to the workshop. We were trained in SRSD, which is kind of the gold standard, self-regulated strategy development. And we're working on getting teachers on the same page, I think, with that. And then, we do have the common pre and post assessments for those 3 writing genres, the common assessment. We're starting to get a little bit more deliberate about using that summative data in a way that will inform our instruction. And then we're also trying to bring a little bit more of the quick writing so that a kid's not just necessarily writing a 2 or 3 page essay argument writing, but hey, you know what makes a best friend? 1 paragraph, making sure kids understand that that's an argument writing. Now, do we have a specific adopted program? Not really, but we are all on the same page. Last year we were using the My View piece, and we're really in the process now of getting together as teams, getting on the same page, where we're doing the same stuff. It's not like a clean, neat program like mine.
Yeah, no, and I think most places don't do that, but I mean, I do see more districts moving towards a more 3-6 or 3-6 to 3-8 to then 3-12 writing strategy or writing plan.
Yeah.
Because I do think a lot of those reading programs, I think the writing pieces aren't usually incredibly strong, so they have to come up as someplace else. So I think if you're going to improve performance across the curriculum areas, the quickest way to do that is improve their writing.
You improve their writing, you improve everything, and I'm smiling because we're really, we've been working at it, and this year we really have it moving forward. We've had some nice grade level meetings. Last Friday, pretty much all the Mullen teachers were at we had like a virtual conference. They weren't all at it, but we have the recordings from it, which are talking about some of those SRSD strategies, and then some other things to bring to the classroom, like quick writes. I think we're in a really good place to move forward. And quite frankly, if you pull out our writing scores, we've seen pretty good growth. 5 through 8 over the last 3 years, almost back to pre-COVID levels. 10th grades have been a little bit more of like a stable piece. If you remember, our 10th grade class really came out of COVID a little bit rough, and they're getting better at it. So I think we're making some good gains. It's the best part of my job.
Dr. Abrams, can I get you while you're up here?
I would love to. I'd love to stay up here.
We don't want to lose you. A couple of points. I really appreciate the emphasis on authentic assessments, and that's obviously incredibly educationally sound, and I don't think anybody's going to argue with your staff focusing on that. So one question amongst the many, many, many questions that we'll probably spare you of this evening would be, how representative do you think the scores are of the students' knowledge base and skill capabilities, if we are appropriately focusing on the assessments that are happening in this building? So that would be A. And then B, just given your new position that we're very privileged to have you in the last couple of years, if you could speak in any way, you're just an excellent storyteller, so if you could talk about sort of broadly, in a short period of time, sort of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going in regards to this, or how you feel about it, that would be wonderful.
So let me just clarify on that first question. Yeah. How does kind of the MCAS assessment line up with our assessments more in the classroom?
Roughly speaking, yeah. Do you think the scores are representative of what we're teaching in the building, and how knowledgeable our kids are in the 10th grade, and how capable they are?
The thing is, the scores are the scores, right? That's where they're at. When I walk through the buildings, and I'm in every building almost every single day. As a matter of fact, I think I was sitting down with your son the other day in class working on a writing piece. We're seeing kids, I think, that are doing some wonderful things in the classroom day to day. Whether it's writing op-eds, which some will be published. The kids in the 4th grade, they were writing informational pieces on, wild animals. I think that when in the classroom day to day, there are just some wonderful, authentic things happening. I think the MCAS is a test on a single day that measures one piece. And I think the finest balance as an educator is how do we hold that accountability piece that the MCAS brings while also bringing joy and growth in kids' everyday lives. I've been in this district almost 20 years, and I'm just proud of all the kids that leave this school building, whether it's an MCAS piece or, the other day I was talking to, Andy and I grabbed some kids that are in the electrician program. Oh my God, I'm reading an electrician manual, and I like reading. And I'm sitting there saying, it's an electrician manual, are you serious? And this kid, who definitely struggled in the academic classroom, was just celebrating his joy at reading. And that made my heart pretty full. So it's kind of a tricky piece where those are, the MCAS is assessing what we should be teaching and the skills. And I see kids rocking it every day in classrooms at those skills. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than a 2-hour test will capture. So I think that was question 1. What was question 2? I'm a little slow.
If you could just speak to, the scores come in, and as you very eloquently put, it's one test on one day. Do you feel like we're gaining ground, we're moving in the right direction? Obviously, that's generally the case. Is this where you would expect us to have been, given where we've been, given all the not insignificant events, including the pandemic, in the last several years?
Yeah, I will say that this year, with this team that you see around you, has been, I think, one of the most wonderful processes I've been involved in Newburyport schools. You see teachers and coaches from every place owning the MCAS data. Every single teacher in this school has an action plan moving forward to not get better at the MCAS, but get better at the skills and the knowledge that the kids need. And that's really what we need. And I mean, the testament is, every seat here is a teacher in the school or a coach. And that's where we're going to see those gains that are going to come out on the MCAS, whether it matters or not. Because if it doesn't matter, that's fine. But someday that kid's going to have to write the report for his boss. He's not going to be thinking about MCAS. He's going to be thinking, can I write this? Can I write what informational skills do I have? Can I read this? So that's kind of more important to me. And again, it's always that fine balance, right? It's a test, but education's about so much more than a test, even though the test is what people see, and it's a simple heuristic. People like simplicity, but we deal with complex little creatures. Especially, like I said, I was with your son the other day. I feel third grade, fourth grade. Fourth. Informational, right? About an must have been an animal, right?
You know better than I do. Thank you for being as eloquent as I thought you would be.
With my Boston accent very pronounced.
We timed Andy, because we thought he was going to be the one that was going to talk too much. I didn't know it was going to be that great. So thank you, high school team. We're going to switch gears and walk to middle school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When the middle and high schools come forward, the teachers are going to stay back, the principals are going to do the bulk of the presenting.
Would it be appropriate for me to just say ditto what Dr. Abrams said?
No.
I guess we'll go through this. All right, folks, thanks for having me tonight. I think you'll hear a lot of the similar kind of tones as far as kind of how we've approached our day at the middle school, just the general overview, how we approach it, and very similar patterns to the high school as far as the vertical alignment that we're really trying to achieve. So hopefully I'm able to articulate that through the presentation. So before I get into kind of our school level overview, so some of the things we do, just like Lisa and Tom had spoke about at the beginning, was we really take a very broad look at our MCAS. We look at it at a building level. So I bring all of my teachers in and we talk MCAS through and through the big picture stuff. And then, like Tom very clearly articulated to us, where we get down to the nitty-gritty is where we get into our departments. So then typically ELA and social studies get together, math and science get together in their respective departments. And that's when we really start to look at the teaching standards. That's where we start to see where have we, and we don't just look at this past year, we try to look at a 3-year trend of what are the standards that we're doing really well, are we covering those standards well, and what are the standards that we're not doing so well, and taking a look at our scope and sequence map to say, well, we have covered those. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty and see what are the lessons that we're teaching, and really starting to make decisions there on what's the resources we're using, how are we articulating this standard or this particular lesson to our student. And that's really the work of my team. And before I go any further, I just want to highlight my team members that are here. So Mary Kate Allen leads our science department, Karen McDonald leads our ELA department, Emily Bullock leads our special ed department, and Beth Dulles leads our math department. So thank you so much for being here and all the work that you guys have put in, not just in this presentation, but for the past 6.5 years that I've been here doing this work. So just to remind you, as we reviewed our school improvement plan to look at one of the goals that we had was to establish some systems and processes. So being able to clearly articulate our curriculum, that's really where this work has stemmed from over the past 3 or 4 years. So you see just our quick overview. We have high typical growth in most reporting categories in both ELA and math. We've improved to exceeding targets in our L students, which is one of our subgroups in both ELA and math, so that's a huge accomplishment for us. One of the big trends you'll see both on this slide and our other slide is our SGP of some of our lowest performing students is in the 74 range, which is extremely high, and that really ties into our school improvement plan goal number 2 when we looked at our SST process, our MTSS process of finding those students that we have some interventions or may need some targeted interventions, and then putting those interventions in place, and we're seeing the fruits of our labor pay off in that SGP in those groups in both math and ELA. Very similar to the high school, we met the target. We met the target for chronic absenteeism. We're still above the 10%, but having a drop of 3% has been really helpful. And fingers crossed, we put some things in place this year where we have an attendance liaison at every single building that is supporting administration with some outreacher families. So a lot of it's adjustment counselors that have good relationships with our families and just trying to find what's going on, why are we coming to school, what are the things we can do to put in place to support your child to get into the building. So again, really proud of that work that we've done, and hopefully that will continue to improve. Some areas that we'll talk about, some overall growth will be our science, our lower achievement scores in science, math, our lower SGP and achievement scores in grade 8. One thing to hash out, Dr. Evans put, just looking at our writing scores, in particular in 8th grade, we've seen a 14.5% increase of achievement since 2002. So just like you said, if we pull out those writing scores, you'll see our writing scores across the board at the middle school have achieved at a higher level the past 3 years. And overall, our achievement levels have stayed flat. Just to give you a number to show you kind of our ELA achievement last year was 503.1. This year it's 502.1. So we're kind of right there. We obviously meet our targets, but our achievement levels are 1.1, 1.2 off if you look at math, science, and ELA. So again, some action steps that we have in place, very similar to the high school. When we look at our strategic planning too, you look at that cone of Amy Webb that has been our strategic plan. When we look at that nitty-gritty, that first kind of phase of that cone is what's happening in that 1 to 2 year plan, and that's where we have those teacher goals when we're looking at student achievement. So all of our goals as well at the middle school are all focused on those skills to support the achievement and growth across the board. Again, Andy did a nice job iterating the vertical articulation, having our CELs and our LTs combined through 6 through 12, getting into classrooms, seeing what those practices look like in those classrooms, and having our teachers really lead that work on a consistent basis. We have the luxury of our schedule at the middle school allows us to have some common planning time built in every day. Teachers have the same hour up at grade level, and then using flex time and early releases and faculty meetings for those vertical 6 through 18s to meet by department. So we do have a good amount of time built in. And then again, you'll see as we use the peer assessment as well as a formative assessment in science and our common assessments across all disciplines, even world language and social studies. I know we're not talking about that. We will be talking about social studies next year, so to be continued. And again, continue to expose our students to potential pathways that we're the middle people, I guess, in the middle school. So again, being able to provide those opportunities for exposure to our students, to college and career readiness, visiting college campuses, bringing professionals into the building. We're looking to partner up with the Naval Shipyard to do some STEM workshops in the spring in grade 7, so that's a work in progress. So again, just to continuously expose as much as we can in those middle grades, so as they get to the high school, they can feel out what they're interested in and have some ideas. Other things that we've taken, looking at our school improvement plan. I know we're kind of expiring our school improvement plan in the next few months, but we're not waiting until next year to put things into action. So I've been meeting with our school council and really looking at our iReady data, and you'll see this as a big action step in our math team, where we're looking at our interim data earlier this year and going to administer that earlier to be able to get those students in a targeted intervention at a sooner date than we have in the past. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And then just highlighting that second to last bullet there with the MCAS boot camp. So typically, this is 3 years, so this January will be 4 years. We have a MCAS boot camp where it's open for all students. However, we do target our students that have lower SGP, lower achievement scores, partially meeting or not meeting expectations across ELA, math, and science. And as we have pulled those data of those students that come every week to that hour-long boot camp, we've noticed that their SGP is an average of a 67. So really the fruits of our labor and the data is showing us that that intervention is working. So now how do we get more students to be involved? We have some plans to share. Okay. Some glows and grows for our ELA. So you'll see consistent improvement in achievement since 2019, as I stated. You'll see growth in students with disabilities, 59%. There's much more detailed data that I'll let you guys take a look at. But I think just a true testament of our team, we're outperforming the state on almost every single standard in grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, which is something I think we can hang our hat on and be proud of. And then specific skills, this is coming right from the teachers as they've analyzed the data, looking at those standards that we have been performing well over the past few years. You'll see those identifying inferences, tone, comparing two fictional works in both 7th and 8th grade. Some areas of growth similar to the high school poetry has always been a little bit of a weakness for us. So definitely an area that we want to take a look at how we're executing that plan and how we're delivering that those lessons. And then again, we can never be, you can never be too good at writing. So again, looking at how do we improve writing across the board, and then specifically looking at some specific standards in grades 7 and 8. One thing that has really gotten us the past couple of years is grade 8 typically has a writing prompt that has where we have to compare and contrast two informational texts, where one has been a letter, one has been a poem, one has been an excerpt. So those things have posed some challenges, even to some of our best writers. So again, looking at how do we expose them to some of that on-demand writing and through those writing workshops, which would be what I talked about here. Okay, so action steps. What are we doing to grow our grows? Okay, make them glows. Definitely increasing our interaction and opportunities with poetry, and I think just to go along with what Melissa said from the high school, you see kids writing a ton in the writing workshop. And I do appreciate school committee member Higgins' commenter on not removing too much of the scaffolds. So again, it's almost like you remove those scaffolds, let's get some more on-demand writing, and then we go back to that writing workshop model, right? So we've got some scaffolds removed, here you go, create your on-demand writing, and now let's have that editing process. And then again, the more iterations and practice our students get with those types of assignments, hopefully reap the benefits when they do have a time high stakes test in front of them. And then again, some of the work that we've done over the summer curriculum is in the ELA and Social Studies Department was really looking at our informational text. So we've seen in grades 7 and 8, we've already done a couple of units at the beginning of the year where they're looking at informational text across both disciplines. And that was something that Dr. Abrams had supported us in class as well, which has been really successful. Moving over to our math glows and grows. Again, you'll see the glows on the left, very specific glows based on standard, based on themes, and then some areas of grow on the right side. Again, number sense in 8th grade, looking at expressions and equations, dependent, independent variables, and then constructor response, I think across the board in math and science, you'll see is an area where we can definitely improve. That goes along with the writing. It's funny when you walk into the classroom, there's literally not a day that I do not walk through a science or math or ELA classroom and I don't hear CER, right? Claim, evidence, reasoning. So they're all using that common language across 6th or 8, which is nice. And again, so kids are hopefully get that CER drilled, and again, more practice across all disciplines will allow us to grow our scores and move those students to achievement. So some action steps specifically that we have is our math. So one thing that we really took, taking a look at the data, that preliminary data that came in the summer was, I'm pulling my hair up, as you guys can see, a little bit with our math data. So again, what can we do, right away over the summer? What can we do to set up our teachers for success? So working with Beth Dulles, working with Lisa, working with Megan over the summer. And then we now have Mark Littlefield, who's obviously, great educator, working with us in a kind of quasi-retired role. He's supporting our math team as well, looking at that 6 through 8. And really the number one goal isn't to look at just 8th grade data. It's really to look at an upward movement for how do we move all students, right? So what are the standards, essentially going back to what I said originally, what are the standards that we're doing a really nice job with, right? Going through a plus-minus kind of analysis protocol. What are the standards that we're not doing so well on? How are we teaching those standards? And allowing the educators, who are the experts in the room, to really determine how we're delivering those lessons. So that work has started. They've had a couple of meetings. They made some really significant progress, and I really think we're going to be able to turn that around as a whole in that 8th grade, but also in the middle school. Again, some other things along with NHS, being able to more thinking in the classroom. So Peter, any help from the others? Little Adal. Okay. A minus. All right, B plus. Okay, I'll take the B plus. So we got Peter L. So you'll see it. Beth, unfortunately, had to go home. She wasn't feeling well. But just to look at her, and I told her I was going to kind of embarrass her a little bit, to look at how she's transformed her classroom in the last 2 months and how she's able to probe questions to students. So rather than just saying, hey, what's your answer? The answer is 2x. Great. How did you get that answer? How did you solve that question? Student B, can you explain how you found your answer? Let's go up into the board and visualize that. So you can see here just a little bit of work that she's done over the summer with Megan and the rest of the math team. You can really start to see it come to life in the classroom. So I want to just say, hats off to Beth and the rest of the department has really taken this on. To get into a little bit more detail as far as kind of the iReady, using the iReady. So we typically give the interim assessment in iReady in late January, beginning of February. So this year we decided to do the interim data in early December. And then taking a look at those students, I don't want to go off in too much of a tangent, but essentially iReady gives us 5 indicators. There's 5 kind of steps in how they rate our students, and really looking at those kind of level 2 and 3 students, and then looking at our MCAS data to really analyze who are those fringe students, who are those students that aren't growing, who are those students aren't moving to that achievement level, and really targeting those students, whether that's in-class interventions or through that flex block intervention. So we feel like by pulling it a little bit earlier, it'll give us more time to take a look at those students again, by saying, you don't stink at math, you stink at this standard in math, whether it's geometry or algebra or whatever that specific standard is, on a daily basis, or those weekly flex blocks that we can get to them. Science, again, you'll see that breakdown kind of by standard. You'll see our glows over the time where we've seen steady growth in technology engineering from that 2022. Life science is steady. Our motion stability has improved over 2 years by 14%. So again, I think that's a great gain. And then heredity shows steady growth, huge growth from that 28% increase over the past few years. Some other areas that, again, that Earth's place in the universe, energy was 70% in 2023, but then down to 40%. So sometimes it's what's become a little bit of a challenge for us this year across math, ELA, and science is we don't have access to the essays this year, and we don't have access to the items this year. They haven't released grades 3 through 8. They did release them in the high school, but they haven't released those items for our 3 through 8 students. So typically how we start off the year is I've got 18 binders on my desk, and I say, hey teachers, welcome back. Here are the essays, and they're able to have those conversations throughout the year with those students. So a little bit of a disadvantage for us, but that's why it's so important we have those common assessments in place for our students to have another data point to discuss. And you'll see an error grow, again, those constructor responses, which is one of our student learning goal for our teachers in our grade 6 through 8 science department. So similar steps to our other departments, increasing writing exposure, using a common rubric that has been developed by our team. We've been using the peer assessment for the last 4 or 5 years or so in our science department, which has been great. And again, now looking at a more of a explicit way of exposing our students to some MCAS-like questions, and again, aligning our curriculum as they go through those scope and sequence maps, again, to spiral, because again, they take the science test in 5th grade, they don't see it again in 8th grade. So again, what are some of those power standards that we can spiral throughout grades 6, 7, 8 to support our students? I think that is it.
Do you have any questions, comments from Mr. Marcos? Go ahead.
So Marco, so you did just mention iReady. So would you say probably that those are telling the same story right now as from what we're seeing in MCAS to what we're seeing in our assessment?
Yeah, I think what we can tell in the iReady, I think I can give you definitely better answer in December when we take a look at this year's versus our achievement levels coming out of MCAS. What we have noticed just looking at a preliminary with the team is there is a group of students in that kind of level 2 to level 3 iReady range that are very similar to their MCAS score. There's definitely some outliers, but again, we want to make sure we take a look at those scores, work with the teacher. What are you seeing in the classroom? And then appropriately place those students either in a flex intervention or those students might just need some review on those specific standards in the classroom.
Question about the, what's the timing of the boot camps you mentioned? Do you use vacations, summer?
So yeah, that's a great question. So how we've done it at the NOC, it's we typically start the week after Martin Luther King Day weekend, and it's usually once a week for the math, and then once a week for the science, and once a week for ELA. And we run that pretty much through April break.
Oh, great.
Yep. Yeah, we've had the 20 to 24 students by grade level that show up consistently. We're really seeing the benefits on their scores.
Yeah, you mentioned that, so that's great.
Yeah, so
And-
just
and-
trying to, we invite, we send in newsletters, we do make phone calls home, and just trying to continue to work with a more targeted approach for the students that we feel would benefit from it.
That's great. And did you have plans to maybe expand that program? Is there a way you can grow it to include more students? I know there's probably some limitations, right, around staffing or...
Yeah, I think what we've tried to do is we invite everybody, and then I think what happens is the first 2 or 3 weeks we get about 50 to 60, and we'll use some support staff to be able to manage a 50, 60 person class. And then what we've noticed over the last kind of 8 weeks after week 3 and 4, those numbers dwindle for a wide variety of reasons. Students are involved in a lot of different activities after school. So we make some phone calls, hey, just a reminder, we'd love to see your child again. So again, how do we keep the groups, the numbers larger is something we definitely have to game plan as a team.
Great. But you are able to accommodate everyone who
absolutely
would benefit and
so we always have our support staff that's able to be a second or third adult in a classroom for that hour after school, and we've been able to support it through the budget as well, as teachers are going outside their contractual hours. So teachers have been on board with it too. So those roadblocks have been lifted by Superintendent Gallagher. So it's been great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions, comments? Ms. Higgins?
Excuse me, did you do a root cause analysis around your math scores? And if so, what was the result?
Well, that's what we're going through right now.
Okay.
So that's what that task force is looking at. So just last Friday, we had some professional development time allotted during the day where Mr. Littlefield and my entire math team was able to take a look at all that work by saying very preliminary. It's 3 hours of work. They got a ton of work done, but that's really the start of it. Taking a look at that standard. What are those standards that we're doing really well? What's the root cause of where are the gaps? And again, I don't think it's just a middle school issue. I think there is some gaps in the elementary that we're going to be talking about with grades 4 and 5, and obviously working with the high school closely. What are some gaps up there that we can kind of fill in as well?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you never know where the root cause is going to take you, or it could certainly take you to gaps that happened years ago. But that's just something I'm really interested in, is where you see adult practice that needs to change, and then how are you going to support the adult practice. So even if we have the assessments there and we have the intervention block there and we have allotted time for reteach, if we're teaching students the same standard in the same way that they didn't get the first time, they likely won't get it the second time. And so it's a matter of how can the teacher more deeply understand that concept? How can they approach it in a different way? How can they teach it differently to really get that understanding?
Yeah, most conversations I've started really over the summer, I think, with looking at those thinking classrooms, that's really where it started to get, I think, my team excited on, you know, we've been doing the same thing, teaching it the same way. How do we teach it differently? Yeah.
Building Thinking Classrooms is a vertical PLC that is being run by Megan Horst at the high school, Molly Farrell at the elementary, and Beth Dallas at the middle school. And so it's a particular book strategy of teaching math that encourages discourse about mathematics. And there's several strategies, I want to say 14, but you guys can yell out from the back if see Molly nod, yes. There's 14 strategies that have been really research-based around like a different way to structure your math instruction. So you could be using any resource. They can use Ready Math from the elementary, they can use Pearson Math at the middle, they can use whatever resources they're using at the high school. Megan's class, who's still here, you can come to the beginning of her class, and one of the strategies you'll see is these whiteboards all around the room, students in randomly assigned heterogeneous groups of 3, and that number is really specific. Solving a problem, what the author, Leonal says is vertical, so you'll have 3 students up with one marker, solving problems and talking about it. And a lot of cool things happen when that is going on. Kids sharing ideas, people hearing different strategies, and then really being forced to articulate in writing and in speaking, like the mathematical concept to solve the problem. So, yeah, I mean, I think that at the middle school, the focus group is all about looking at the standards, using the MCAS as a start. Like, how are we doing with our standards? How are we teaching the standards that we're doing well at? How are we teaching the standards where we're not doing so well at? Making adjustments to curricular resources if we need to, and looking at instructional strategies at the same time.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. Can I put you on the spot?
Of course.
Okay. First, it's no secret that I'm not a fan of standardized tests. I agree with everything Dr. Abrams said. But a lot of the calls I get, it's always shocking why people call us and ask these questions, but we have to answer sometimes if we can. So the 8th grade is the lowest math in the district, right? So, and this is all great information in your plan and everything. Do you think that you could put a number on what the increase would be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, from 36% of meeting and exceeding to a higher number?
Greater than 36%. I would, I can't be.
What would your goal? I know 100 is the goal, right? But what's the state on this? On the
that's where you use the growth scores.
Right.
So if you look at like the data, the little data report that you have, page 11, you're looking for your students. The growth scores are helpful to us that way because you're looking for your students to be in a typical growth rate.
No, I understand all of that, but I'm just.
It would be easier for him to say, like, we would love to see, like, the high school saw a 65% growth rate.
Right.
We would love to see our students in a high, typical or a high growth area, as opposed to him, like, giving you a specific number of.
Well, like this year, you must have set, like, a goal, right? And I'm sure we didn't read it, but, like, you must have set some sort of goal to, like, because the scores were just as low last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so if you look at like our overall achievement in math, just the scores, they're only up by 1.7. But the prior year in grades 6, 7, 8, our growth was really high in our achievement, so that's why you see like we're not meeting that target. If you want a number, I would honestly.
I'm just
No, I think people do want a number. I think I mean the growth scores are nice, and I think on broadly speaking, most people don't understand the growth scores. So when people, broadly speaking, in the community see a third of students achieving, it's a fair question, just to say, were you surprised by the scores? Where would you like to see the scores go? Broadly speaking.
I mean, to be honest, I think I was a little surprised by our grade scores.
So I'm just trying to gauge the level of concern from you.
I would put my 8th grade team against anybody in this state. I'll put my entire middle school against anybody in this state.
Yeah, I want to make sure that this is nothing against any particular staff.
I just want to, like, if you come into my 8th grade classroom, 6th or 7th, you will be blown away on a daily basis. The one thing I will say, and again, this is just a trend across just North Shore principals. So when I came across our data, like, let's just see how everyone else is doing. So we have a large group of North Shore principals and 16 responses, 14 are having a very similar, 14 districts in our greater Kenosha are having a very similar approach of their data, or I guess a similar result.
For 8th grade specifically?
For 8th grade specifically. And a lot of it has to do with a lot of different reasons. Some are very similar to ours, some are not. So that kind of relaxed me just a little bit, but again, I don't like comparing myself with others because I think we're better than everybody. And I know that our staff is better, and they're giving us a better product. So I think, would I love to see a 50% next year? Absolutely. Are we going to get there? I don't know, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we get over 50%. But then to say 50%, what about the other 50%? So I would love, as a holistic approach, if I could stand here in front of you next year and say, hey, we've improved that 36% by 10%, and then all of our students are able to grow maybe another, from our 50 SGP or 49.4, what it was, and we get back to that 60 SGP that we were last year, I think that would be a huge win for us. That's really, I think that's something that we would hang our hat on.
I think this is really important, so I don't mean this to be flippant at all.
No.
It doesn't, I guess to me, it doesn't matter necessarily what you're measuring against, but you said that, you think your teachers are excellent, the product is excellent. How do you measure that? Like, is it qualitative, is it quantitative? How do you measure what excellence looks like?
I mean, I think if we take I don't mean this flip it by any means. They don't just fall asleep in 8th grade and miraculously be successful in 10th grade. They're not just miraculously not successful in 10th grade and get into some of the most prestigious colleges when they leave Newburyport High School. So I think how I would measure it is, yes, our MCAS scores are where they are, one day in time. But I really think from a holistic approach, when we take that K through 12 model, I'll put our kids' college entrance. So I think that's one measurement. Again, going to college is one measurement. I think that's one way that I think I would measure a success at that level. But I also look at, from a data point of view, looking at our common assessments, we are seeing some of the standards we struggle on common assessments, so again, looking back at how we're teaching those. And then we on a lot of our common assessments, we are performing, so then what are we not doing on that day? What are we not doing for that preparation? So things of that nature.
All set? All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Marcos.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Okay, next up. Tara, Principal Rossi, and Principal Sobolewski are going to present together. MCAS starts in 3rd grade, so we're really looking at like a 3, 4, 5 approach to analyzing.
Alright, thank you. So we really wanted to jump right into grade 3 through 5 English language arts, starting with the globes. So 3rd grade, analyzing stories, 5 out of our top 10 questions were about stories, and we averaged about 8 points above the state, so very proud of that globe. 3rd grade also used evidence from a story consistently above the state average, and words in context. In 4 questions of the 3rd grade ELA MCAS, we were 8.25% higher than the state, and that was also replicated in 4th grade. And in 4th grade, the skill of determining the meaning of a word in context is consistently above the state average.
We were actually pretty excited to see our data around making inferences, because that's a more complex task, especially for students that are 9 and 10. So we've gone up in making inferences. Our explanatory writing averages in 5th grade have gone up from 22 to 2024. We're at 51%. Figurative language understanding and students exceeding meaning. We have more students in that, moving up into that category. We all need to work on folk tales, apparently.
So for our grows, folk tales. So we taking a hard look at that. 5 out of our 10 lowest reading questions were about folk tales. We also will work on distinguishing between figurative and literal language. So those questions were below the state in 3rd and 4th grade.
And in third grade, informational text, 4 out of our 10 lowest scoring questions were around informational text, using text features, understanding the main idea of a passage, and so on.
Fourth grade, 2 of the lowest questions and 2 of the highest questions were about determining the meaning of words in context, which indicates the skill is partially known but not mastered. Really wish we could see those questions from the Department of Education so we can look at the ones they had strengths in and compare it to the ones that they were weaker in. In 5th grade, using evidence from the text to support a main idea or claim is a lower performing standard. And identifying main idea across genres in grades 3 to 5. And we're really digging into writing a lot this year. As Dr. Abrams very clearly explained to everybody, we're doing a lot of work around writing.
So for our action steps, we're looking to expand vertical academic vocabulary during our instructional time. So for example, having students really understand the meaning of literal and figurative and informational text language such as key and illustration, especially with our youngest elementary students, kind of like Brianna was saying, where we're building each time the students take a test, each time they grow up grade by grade, so making sure they really understand some of this academic vocabulary so that they can continue to succeed. We're also increasing our attention vertically to folktales. We're focusing our attention on writing through consistent team meetings, common assessments, analyzing the data, and determining what instructional skills we need to continue to improve on so that writing across grade levels continues to improve. We're also taking an iterative approach to figurative language and inference instruction. So from 3rd to 5th grade, the scores around figurative language and inference grow significantly, indicating it takes more exposure and developmental growth to master the skill. So knowing that the students will get better at it over time, what can we do starting in 3rd grade to continue to help and support that growth?
So additional action steps are our data meetings. They're continued data meetings. We're doing a lot of meetings around the writing. Dr. Abrams has met with 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. I'm not leaving out K-2, I just can't speak to it. We're increasing common planning time for our CEL, our leaders, and our coach-led grade level team meetings. And we are continuing with PBIS and our trauma-informed instruction and playful learning initiative to apply current research in the field of education to our daily practice, because we know that when students are doing things hands-on and really actively involved, they remember a lot more.
And just to chime in, K2 is also doing
I know.
Okay, and before we forget, we'd love to just thank our team so that we don't go through the presentation and not forget them. They're extremely important in this whole process, and it's been wonderful working with them and really getting to know, as a vertical elementary school team, how we're supporting each other and our students. So in the back we have Kristen Smolsky, Molly Farrell, Kelly Hart, Kelly Garbarino, and Julie Doyle. They're amazing. I'm very grateful that you're here and that you've helped us with this presentation. Okay, so moving on to math. Our goals for math, overall achievement. 3rd grade, our low-income subgroup increased 17% for meeting and exceeding standards. And in 4th grade, the SGP increased from 22% in 2022 to 47% in 2024. Another goal is word problems. 3rd grade and 4th grade consistently performed above the state on single step word problems. Representing fractions, 3rd and 4th grade, that was a growth using models to show and understand the fractions.
And then for 5th grade, they outperformed the state on all problems involving volume and all problems involving decimals. So some grows. What we noticed about fractions was the glow for fractions is really when they're using the models to show understanding, which that is definitely a huge piece of iReady. So we're going to continue to look at fractions, 3rd grade and 4th grade. Geometry is a tricky subject, and it usually falls later in the year when you're teaching it, so sometimes teachers don't even get to the unit before the MCAS. Symmetry for 4th grade and real world problems with fractions and expression for 5th grade.
All right, so our action steps, we're in year 2 of using the iReady math curriculum. It's going really well. We'll continue implementing and working with Molly, our math coach, to continue to make sure students are accessing the curriculum and the teachers are comfortable continuing to teach it. We're also developing a play-based approach to enhance hands-on learning. There's a lot of ways that we can make math hands-on, and bringing a play-based approach to math will help us reach students in another way. And we'll continue to focus on interpreting word problems and understanding the language in math.
And we keep hearing about this wonderful book, which actually is pretty amazing. I'm reading it myself. I've had my teachers that are reading it coming up to me and like sharing things and being really excited about it. So I love that we're doing that vertically. We're going to integrate more data conversations in and really kind of look in what can we change in the moment or within a week in terms of what we're doing in math, where it lies, looking at not just the iReady data, obviously, but the exit tickets and the assessments that come with the iReady units. And then ongoing use of intervention for students. We have Kathleen Petrie's our math interventionist, and we look at data. We're actually meeting next week looking at data for the kids that are currently in intervention.
It's also happening at the Breslingham with our math interventionist and using the iReady assessment to determine the intervention cycles.
So science and technology. The data shows students performed above the state on almost all constructed responses. These next 2 glows, I think I kind of just spoke to a little bit, but the teachers, 5th grade teachers, implemented a hydrologic cycle field trip, and they also did a water filter construction activity in STEM last year. They were out in the community visiting the water plant, and those experiences, those questions related to that significantly increased. And I think, again, that just shows the importance of the hands-on and the place-based education. And Earth and Space Science, this unit is paired with a literacy connection and a research project and informational writing. So again, it's this integrated unit that the kids were very successful on. So I think those 2 things of the hands-based, place-based education, and when it's really integrated, just is a model for what the kids will remember, because it's repetitive. Grows, anticipating the next steps in an investigation based on a given model, analyzing another scientist's work as opposed to conducting your own investigation and learning from that data, and then physical science standard about matter. Matter is the story of the state. There's the Boston accent coming in. Action steps. So we are really coming back to, we didn't move away from it, but our keys to literacy, vocab and comprehension approaches and routines that we were using really focus on vocabulary. So we are going to be looking at that again. Like Dr. Abrams said, a number of us were online taking the keys writing sessions, and they were excellent. Incorporate additional ways to connect science and literacy. And then we need to look a little bit deeper at content curriculum connections for our multilingual learners.
So together, Breslingham and Nolan, we created some action steps to continue to work towards improving our scores and improving the overall school experience for our students. So the first one is, as I mentioned before, the iReady math curriculum. Continue to implement, continue to coach, and make sure that the teachers are comfortable with the material and using that curriculum to the fullest. Also, our focus on writing, drop everything and write, more on-demand writing, just getting students comfortable with it. The more we do it, the more comfortable they'll be. As Tara mentioned, keys to literacy, vocabulary, and comprehension routines, doing that on a regular basis and having it be across subjects so students are comfortable using those strategies when they're writing. And our curriculum education leaders will continue to lead staff meetings at least once a month or grade level team meetings that focus on curriculum, assessment, and data-driven instruction.
These things have already been mentioned, but the attendance liaisons are in place. We're working on play-based education. We're looking at MyView. We're working on writing, and both schools are implementing some more mindfulness to support the social-emotional wellness under stress. We notice our students get very anxious when they have to take these standardized tests, because it's not something that's in the norm of what they do every day in school. And so even if we're saying, don't worry about it, do your best, just try, it's still anxiety provoking because it's completely out of the norm for them. So we're just trying to work on that, teaching breathing and how to relax and, move through it. It's not a big problem, it's a little problem, that kind of thing, for our little guys.
Can I just ask about my views? You say you're doing a curriculum review. Does that mean, like in our curriculum cycles, this could be something that's up for new?
Yes.
So it's not just my view. You're looking at other programs right now too, or you're just looking at my?
So in the 3-year cycle, we're in year 4 of my view.
Yeah, we're in year 4, and really what we've begun to do this year is, it's kind of a multi-pronged process. So we've begun to look at the MyView assessment data that comes with the suites, collect that and look at that. We've begun to gather teacher feedback on the MyView units that we've performed. We're setting up a process of getting student feedback on the MyView program. We're also looking to correlate it to the MCAS data to see how that aligns. Next year would be the step when we start looking at, this is the year we're looking at its effectiveness, its efficacy, et cetera. Next year, if we're looking at something else, is where we would start to solicit different programs and then start to preview those, similar to how they did iReady last year.
That should already be correlated to that's my view, right?
Yeah. It's all aligned. We just want to see its effectiveness.
Anyone else? Yeah, Higgins.
Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to say what I really appreciated about it was that you, throughout the whole presentation, you really articulated the way that you believe students learn best. So you're really student focused there to say that you believe that students learn best through play and through active hands-on learning. And then you're aligning all of your strategies to that. And so I just saw a really coherent through line, starting with how you think students learn to how then you think the adults need to teach them, and how are you going to support that to happen. So thank you.
Just building on that, in addition to the vertical PLC we have for the building thinking classrooms, we also have Kelly Garbarino in the back there, who is our literacy coach, is co-leading with Jackie Rousseau, our tech integrator, a playful learning PLC. The president has already had a visit from the Department of Ed, a one-day PD for the whole staff, and we will be applying for the grant that was most recently released this week.
Great. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. I think it's more for Ms. Furlong and the superintendent. I really appreciate all the work that went into the presentation, and I want to reiterate that to everyone. This is like, nobody likes to have to present on scores. It's like it's the most unappealing part of teaching, from my perspective. But I appreciate that you guys take it seriously, and I also appreciate that there's more than MCAS to evaluate and all that. I would say, though, tonight we heard some standards. We're doing better than the state. We're doing better. I've talked to some North Shore principals. We're doing better than this. We're doing better than that. We're doing worse than this. I think we do need to have a standard across our district, who we're comparing ourselves to and why. And then maybe it's not the same for every single category or every single classroom, but I think it would be helpful as a district for you guys to set some standards about how we're comparing ourselves, how we're evaluating ourselves, and what our goals are. Where we want to go. Maybe it's not percentage points, but maybe it's some metrics that we can come back to next year and say, we wanted to achieve this, we didn't achieve it, but here's part of the way we got there, and so forth. And I think that's what gets set at the district level to inform the principals and help them set those standards to that overall district goal. So maybe we can help as a school committee to do that, but I would really like that common metric or those common goals iterated throughout the budget process as well.
because I think it does help us all to be on the same page. I love the vertical alignment. I love that you guys are working together. It's clear you're working together. But let's start to maybe think about some of the district-wide goals that we want to achieve, and set those, and how we're going to compare ourselves and how we're going to measure success.
A couple things about that. Are you looking specifically for a district-wide goal in regards to MCAS achievement levels?
I don't think so, but, and I'm not necessarily prepared tonight to ask you to do that. I just think that who we're comparing ourselves against, or what standard we're using to compare ourselves against. I think, to say that we're doing better than the state, I don't think that's a fair metric, because we are a well-resourced district with pretty high-achieving students on one end, and some students that need a lot of assistance on the other hand, but we're a well-funded district. So to say that we're doing better than the state, I don't think is a fair comparison, honestly. I think that's great that we are, but, so let's drill down a little bit and set some relevant goals, and whether that's scores or, progress, I don't know, but I don't want to set that tonight. I just want to throw that challenge out to you guys and to us as a committee to think about that.
I think the scores, I think we would all agree with you that our achievement scores are not at the level that we would like to see them at. The reason that we go back and look at the growth scores is that moving those achievement numbers, what the growth scores tells us is like, here's high growth. You've moved a student from 3rd grade to 4th grade at a very high level of growth, because where we're at this year is like, we're starting at a particular base level and we're trying to move forward with high growth scores. So that is why I understand that the growth scores aren't always easily understood by the community, but I do think they're important for the community to understand that we are standing here saying we want our achievement scores to rise to a higher level. How we get there is going to be like growing kids as quickly as we can, and we can see through growth scores from the state, like how quickly you can grow a student. And the iReady scores will point to that as well. So you can take a particular iReady score at the beginning of the school year, and iReady will say, at a average typical growth, you're going to get your student here. At a high level of growth, you're going to get your student there. So, I think like the Department of Education, we're looking for is, what are those high-impact instructional strategies we can use more of that will allow us to accelerate some of that learning? So I do agree with that. I do also think that we look to some of the accountability data in the MCAS that we didn't talk about tonight that you can find in this report and also online. The Department of Ed sets targets for us. We would love to be in a position where we're exceeding the targets, not just approaching or meeting those targets. So those are preset for us. Those are something that community can use to kind of gauge and look at. So those are just two thoughts. I don't know if you want to add anything, or Superintendent, if you want to add.
No, I think you explained it well.
I think holistically, when you've been in education for as long as I have, and you look at what a district is doing, that it's not just academic MCAS scores. There's a lot that we are doing that does not happen in any other district. And hands down, I would talk to anybody about that at any point in time. There are a lot of things that we do, even just having STEM. We have surrounding towns around us that don't, kids don't have the opportunity to have STEM on a weekly basis at all. So it would be great for us to be able to figure out a way to present more holistically on these. We're also doing A, B, C, D, and all of these other areas in comparison to.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I don't want to end without all of us thanking the educator sourcing. In the back here, it's 8:30. I know that the NOC has student-led conferences this week, and there's plays and lots of things going on at night. These educators were with us for many hours this fall, helping us put this together, helping us to reimagine a new way to approach data, helping us to think about digging deep, speaking to the community about their commitment to bringing every child forward from where they are today to a higher level of achievement next year. So thank you, all of you, for having been here with us, and we look forward to the rest of the year. Thank you.
Sorry, do you want to add, or should we move move on.
No, I just want to thank our teacher leaders for all of your hard work and reiterate what Ms. Furlong and Dr. Abrams said. It's a team approach. We're in this together like we always have been. So thank you very, very much.
All right, so we're going to move on to the business manager hiring process.
I just wanted to make one overarching comment for the superintendent just on that MCAS presentation. So first, I really appreciate the framing of the presentation. I thought it was very effective that you started with the questions that the district, the school, and the teachers ask. Like, that just gives us insight into your thought process and how everyone approaches this data. The types of questions that you're asking. So I think that was really great. I also feel like this approach to explaining what is it that the team is interpreting about the data and what are their action steps and what are their next steps. Although we might have feedback and thoughts about what we liked or didn't like or what could be stronger, I think overall this is a really, really strong presentation. Like, I'm really impressed by the presentation. I think it's one of the best we've seen in the last few years. It tells us exactly how you interpret this data and what you want to do about it moving forward, which is, really what I've been asking for. At the same time, I do have to say that I think this presentation we should absolutely continue, but it shouldn't replace the MCAS presentation that just looks at data. Because I think that that's just transparent for community and families. So for instance, this presentation, which again is excellent, but there was bullet points that said, we moved from 10%, we moved up 14%. But moving up 14% doesn't tell us, does that mean you move from a 10 to a 24? Does it mean you move from a 70 to an 84, right? Like where did that movement actually occur in the overall grand scheme of things? So it's just, kind of for overall transparency, I would still really appreciate just getting a presentation that's kind of cut and dry, cold, like here are the numbers in September, or October, this is where we are, and then getting this type of presentation around this type of year to say this, and now that we've analyzed it, this is what we're going to do about it. Which I think this one's more important. I just don't think it should replace having the other one.
Okay. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think Ms. Walker, and Ms. Higgins as well, it might be worth thinking about a venue to discuss this further, because I think it's an under discussed.
If only we had a subcommittee that we could talk.
Well, you weren't here last time. We would have had one by now.
I mean, it's a big topic, and I think what struck me is essentially part of what Ms. Walker was saying is that I think we could provide some more guidance, and that sort of leads us to a broader discussion about what the role of the school committee is. So regardless of where you stand on standardized testing, and I'm sure there's a broad range, actually I know there's a broad range on the committee itself on the value of standardized testing and what it means and how important it is and what these scores mean and how important they are, and some of us have those discussions on the side, and I don't know, I'm going to end up start talking about metaphors all of a sudden, but the people describe the school committee's role metaphorically. DESE tries, and they're always talking about ships, and I don't really like ship metaphors because all of a sudden you're talking about the weather and no one knows what the weather represents, but nonetheless, that one suggests the superintendent is captain of the ship, and we're broadly supposed to be telling the superintendent where to tell his staff and crew to send said ship. You never know who the students are in this metaphor, but the crew is clearly the teachers. So we love the teachers, we value the teachers, we think we've got a great crew. That's what we heard tonight, and nobody's arguing with that by any means. But we do seem to be in a place where we're essentially saying go to Europe, when maybe we need to be saying we should go to England, or we should go to France, or we should go to Portugal, and those are vastly different cultures. And we're not quite sure how to get there. People used other metaphors. They say, should be like a corporate board. So the CEO comes and gives a report on, obviously in the corporate world, it's quarterly earnings, and we would all agree that this has nothing to do with quarterly reports. We're trying to There's no product here. The product is humans. The product is getting kids to evolve. So it's not a perfect analogy, but it's one that people use. And so that would be one where you would come and you'd say, well, look, we're not really hitting our targets. Could you explain to us how we're going to get there? And I think Ms. Higgins articulated that we heard some of that, which is great. But nonetheless, we don't really have codified numbers or targets to hit. And in the corporate world, in the profit-driven world, that's very clear. Okay, the sales staff isn't hitting it. We get rid of the sales staff, or we get a new sales staff, or we get a new strategy. This is a multi-year approach, which is great. We've got a massive strategic plan. But nonetheless, if we can't say, we want to grow 10%, and, so I was saying, some of us do have these conversations, and, Mr. Callahan doesn't agree with me in a lot of things, which is great. It's a very healthy conversation. But he's an evolved political thinker who can say, well, suppose I did agree with you. What would that mean for us? Meaning, what would our role be? And that's a really great question. So we mostly agree on a lot of things. But, a medical metaphor would be, what is the health of what we're looking at? And is there a differential diagnosis? Because you could extrapolate this and take it to Ms. Walker's previous point and compare it to said North Shore towns, said 11 districts that DESE places us up against, and the report is we're not healthy. So you send that to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, I'll give you a differential diagnosis. No, sure, you got a fever, but actually you're doing fine. Get back out there, you'll be okay. But if you come back and you say you've got a fever, and you've got a cold, and you're fatigued, and you've got, well, let's figure that out and get under the hood and try to figure out what we need to do, and if that requires a more invasive intervention. And we're at a point where we don't know how to be invasive or how to describe how we want to approach this particular problem, which is how to measure our academic success. And I love what Principal Rossi is saying about our holistic development, and that's wonderful, and I'm so glad that our district emphasizes that. But there's also a point at which, at some point, at the core of education is the academic aspects of the project, which are often measured, meaning at some point you need to build a skill set and you need to have a knowledge base. And as Dr. Abrams said, at some point it's not going to matter, meaning your boss is just going to want the report. The college is just going to want you to hand it in. The college is going to need you to take a standardized test. So if we're saying we don't value standardized tests, that's one approach, which is fine, but maybe at some point we need to inspire them to value it more, or not, which is fine. And that's what Ms. Higgins, I think, was driving at, which is if this is not an accurate measure of our academic progress in our district, that's great. Give us some of those numbers and let us feel good about that, because they very well may exist. But in the absence of those, it's very, very difficult to say this is great, or to say, to Mr. Callahan's point, who doesn't even believe in test scores, it would be great if we could improve by 10% or 20% so that we could go back to our constituencies and say, we've got a target to suggest we might get to 50%. And it shouldn't be torturous to extricate that as a target. The targets are there. The targets exist. We can talk about the targets. But in the absence of goals, it's very, very hard to hit targets. So I apologize for going on for too long, but this is a synthesis of a lot of ideas from a lot of people in our community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I will just say regarding the curriculum, or whatever we're calling it, subcommittee that you referenced, Mayor, I didn't get it onto this agenda because it was pretty packed, as you can see, but that is a plan for next agenda.
Sure. We got 2 meetings left in the year, so
we
I think
do. So at the next agenda, it'll be on there, and we can discuss and ideally vote to establish that committee at our next meeting. So,
just a follow-up. I appreciate your feedback, but it does sound, going back to Ms. Furlong's suggestion, that we make MCAS the priority of the district from the school committee. I mean, like one of the top goals, instead of the, some of the strategic plan and some of the things that we're doing. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Which we.
Well, I don't think we're there yet.
I don't think
we
we're.
want to have the discussion
like
about
we are.
whether,
No, it sounds like we are.
So I think. Sorry to Vice Chair, I just hopped in, but.
Go ahead.
I think Member Boger's point is one perspective, but it reflects some general, input from multiple people in the district, families. But it doesn't mean that we have to settle on something tonight. I think it's just that we have to have a broader conversation about, that we have to give you guidance. You have to ask us for guidance. We have to think about broadly what our objectives are. And no, I don't think I heard Member Boger saying we need to just focus on the MCAS scores. I think it doesn't mean that we can't think holistically about our goals as a district. But I think we need to acknowledge that we're not, by one measure, we're not doing that well. And what does that mean? And all of your staff did a great job also talking about some of our strengths and some of the ways that we are improving tonight. But I think we also need to address the shortcomings and figure out what that means about our budget and what that means about, overall our strategic process going forward in terms of, collaboratively working on how we address some of these issues. But I didn't hear Member Boger saying we need to focus on the MCAS only. I think we need to have a broader conversation. I don't think we're going to have a decision tonight about.
No, but I don't think it's only, but I think it's a priority.
I think it is a priority to at least respond to it, right? I mean,
with the budget aspect,
yeah.
I've taken up my allotted time for the evening. I fully recognize that, but the budget aspect is, I think we need to create an environment where it's okay to say to us, to each other, and it's clearly these discussions are happening, and we just haven't figured out how to have them in open session, which is fine. But meaning, it's okay to say this is challenging, and by the way, could you support us in this way? Meaning that would be an easier question to have, meaning we want to get you resources. We want to, if you say, this is where we're struggling, this is what we need to get there, and we don't have what we need to get there, that's a very tangible thing for us to work with. It's, just on the budget thing, sorry, I'm talked out.
Yep, go ahead.
So I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I guess what I'm hearing and what my thoughts are in general are that I would appreciate academic goals and then progress towards those goals, and that does not need to be MCAS in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to say it's DIBELS for K2 and you're going to show me what is your baseline data and what is my goal, and by the end of the year I want X percentage of students to reach this level on DIBELS, fine. If you want to use iReady, because you're using that 3 to 8, and you want to show us the iReady scores, and let's say by the end of the year I want this percent to be in tier 1, or we want to move, this, I wouldn't even say our goal is that bottom percent, because honestly, the district's doing incredibly well with our lowest performing students and our low income students. It's actually quite impressive. But, if the goal is iReady, that's fine. And then, in high school, I think we're going to, in light of the ballot question, we need to rethink our high school goals anyway. Again, I'm fine with that. It just needs to be, what is the academic goal? Is it that the high school creates its own, end of year assessment or mid-year assessment and then tells us how the students are doing, or, there's a large writing project and there's a rubric and we're saying we really want to get X percentage of students to score in this column on the rubric, or we want to move from their mid-year, they were scoring, 2 out of 4 on the rubric, which makes sense for the mid-year, and by the end, we want to get this many students to get up to 3 or 4 on the rubric. Again, that makes sense to me. I guess my perspective is that I just want to understand, what is the academic goal for the district in each of the grade bands, and then how are we moving ourselves towards it? And if it's not MCAS, again, that's okay with me. I just want to find a way to measure it rather than, this is how we think we're doing, but not that that's what you're saying. I shouldn't even say that, but I'm just saying I want to figure out what is your goal and how do you measure it?
All right.
Good for now. All right, I'd love it if we could get a seat for Ms. Keeley at the table. I know there's a couple chairs at the end, if we could make some space for her to. I think it would be nicer to have you at the table, if you don't mind. I mean, unless you have slides.
No, I'm very happy to be
Yeah, I think it's more comfortable this way then. And then I don't have to turn my back to everyone. It's just awkward. So thank you for
You're
joining
welcome.
us at the table. Are you leading this conversation?
So I think we have, well, I apologize because I came in a bit late, but this piece that I'll be discussing is in regard to the process for hiring the next business manager. So that's the piece that I'm planning on talking with you about this evening. And the superintendent may add into it as well. So we're looking at a direct hire of the school committee with this position. And what I would like to understand is there's a couple of different options as far as the process for hiring this particular position. The first option is the school committee as a body would run the search committee with the assistance of HR. So that would be the first option that would be available. The second option would be that as a body, you delegate the responsibility for running the committee or the search to the superintendent and the administrative team with the assistance of the school committee. So they look a little bit different, the two processes. Ultimately, the decision is yours to make. The first process, if you decided to run it as a body on your own, your screening committee, which is what is comprised at the beginning that looks at the resumes and the candidates, the screening committee, if you wanted to all participate, would have to be done in open session. So it would not qualify unless it was not a quorum of school committee members. It wouldn't qualify under the executive session rule for screening of candidates. If you were to delegate, the way that would look is there could be a non-quorum body of school committee members on the original screening committee that would then look at all of the resumes and decide who to move forward. And then also, depending on how you structure it, that group would consist and become the first round of interviews. So, but it just would not be able to be a quorum in order to qualify for the executive session, which would allow the confidentiality of the candidates prior to them becoming quote-unquote finalists or moving them forward. So what I'm looking for you to decide and potentially vote on, I'm not sure how you would handle that, is which direction you would like to go as a body. And then once that decision is made, what we can do is we can talk about what the process will look like.
Well, personally, I favor the idea of a hiring or screening committee that just has the, 3 members that we would choose, so that it's going to be pretty tedious if we try to do it from step one with everybody. I don't think that would be the most efficient. I don't personally feel that I need to be involved in every step of the process. I think if we could identify 3 people, I think the mayor, if you want to, I think you should be a part of that. I think that would make sense. And then I'd love to talk about other people who could support that process, not just school committee members, because we need that outside expertise as well. I don't know if Ethan Manning could join this screening committee, but I think he'd be a great person to have involved.
Sure, you would do that.
And then if there's, maybe you could recommend a member of the business office, someone who would report to the business manager, who could also be a part of it. That's what I'd like to see, kind of a collaborative approach.
So if that's the approach that you want to take, that would be the delegation process. What I would recommend in that process is that there are members, that each member has an opportunity to be part of the process. That as we go through, so you have a number of you as part of the original screening, and then in the next round of interviews, you can have the people that didn't get a chance to participate. So it is a very collaborative process. What I just wanted to clarify is that in doing that, then we will run that process in that way with school committee as part of each step of the process. And then we can discuss, once the decision is made, if the decision is made, we can discuss what does that screening committee look like. It can be as big and as broad as you want, as long as the screening committee, the original screening committee, in order to hold it confidentially, which I think is in fairness to whatever candidates we have the way to do that originally, as long as we do that with the non-quorum amount of people, then we can have as many people as we want, and then we move forward from there. So if that's the process that you would like to go with, then we can certainly facilitate that process.
And then just in my past experience running these, typically your first round, you'd have some people, obviously from central offices who work with the person, and typically 2 school committee members on the first round, or it could be up to 3. And then they would recommend finalists. And that's when you let the people that are applying know, when you're a finalist, it's going to be public. Your first round, if you have other people in other districts that may apply, that first round, you kind of promise them the confidentiality piece. And then when you get to a finalist role, then you call them and let them know it's going to be moved forward. And then your second round would probably be, with the mayor, Ethan, and it's probably a couple more, obviously school committee, but then other people.
And finalists, are we thinking like 2 or 3?
Hopefully.
Kind of?
Hopefully, we have 2 or 3. As you all know, the business manager positions are getting harder to fill, similar to, special ed and other positions like that.
So that privacy piece you mentioned is another reason why it just doesn't seem practical to have the entire committee involved from the beginning.
Yeah,
because then we could not provide that.
It's true, if you...
To the applicants.
I don't think we'll get the applicants if you do it that way.
Yeah.
That's another point. Yeah, so I think that process makes sense to me. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What I would plan to do as we go through the process, very similar to what we did the last time, is provide updates periodically as requested based on the different steps of the process, so that everybody is informed about what's happening and where we're at in the process. So I think the first step was to find out what was the decision of the body that you would like to handle as the process. So now that we've known that, we can kind of move forward and talk about what comes next.
So I don't disagree with what was discussed. I personally would like to have a proposal that I can respond to. So if you're trying to get feedback tonight and then give us a proposal for how this will work, I'd rather as a body vote on this and have it written down in front of us, what we're doing, what are the steps. I mean, I think we had this issue last time where I think there was some miscommunication or misperception about.
So I think what you're voting on tonight is whether or not you're going to delegate the process. That's what you're voting on tonight. And then at the next meeting, it will be, here is the process that we've outlined. Do you all agree to this? But I think we can't move forward with what the process looks like until we know if you want to run the process as a body outside the confidentiality, or if you want to delegate that and run it with school committee members playing a role. Then at the next meeting, what you can vote on is, this is what we have as a process.
Would we also be able to get the job description? It would be great to have that in our packet at the next meeting. Has that been posted yet?
The position has been posted.
And where have you posted it?
It's with MASPA, it's on Indeed, it's on School Spring. So it's in those 4 places right now.
Great. Andy and I went to a workshop at the school committee conference that was specifically on this issue, and I can talk about it more later when I talk about the conference, but we got a lot of great tips, and they also recommended LinkedIn. I know there's some issue with that. I don't know if we need to pay for LinkedIn, but they really recommended it to kind of broaden the applicant pool. They said sometimes you can get people from higher ed or nonprofit.
I have an email actually out to LinkedIn. I have never posted on LinkedIn before, but based on our last conversation, I do have an email out to the support team at LinkedIn to see how.
That's great. It just seemed like kind of a think outside the box way of attracting more candidates. And she was also talking about using various hashtags so that it shows up for people. This is definitely beyond my understanding, but it sounded good. It sounded like maybe we would reach more people. And then MASBO does training in May, so if we got someone who was kind of from outside of the school business field, we could get them into that training in May, so that they could hopefully hit the ground running. So.
I know on the city side, we've done that through LinkedIn, so I don't know if you want to talk to Dodge about that. We just did that for the chief of staff.
That was a good list of suggestions. We should pass that on. I'm sure it's occurred. I mean, I'm sure they've all, the superintendent and Ms. Keeley is already, the organization's, but we should probably try to share.
Yeah, well, either, maybe one of us will be on that screening committee, or if not, maybe we can relay that information to the screening committee.
Right.
So, I'm not sure we need to vote on anything tonight. I think does anyone feel like we need to vote, or is it more just talking about the process and then formalizing it at the next meeting?
That's what I was
comfortable with that.
Feels like Pam can come back with
Yeah, now that
what
we've
we've kind of talked about.
That's what I was
articulated it.
alluding to,
That's what
is
we would
we
vote
can give
on.
guidance tonight, and I'd like to vote on something that's more concrete.
Yeah.
So would the guidance be that you're providing, you would like me to come back with what the process would look like based on it being delegated?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine, I can do that.
Just to clarify, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. I think you said that you wanted to have each school committee member have a place in the process somewhere. Is that what I heard?
So you can have, so people were able to have part of the process last time, so you sat in on an interview. So as, we cannot have a quorum. Yeah, so, but if there are, in the second round of interviews, if the mayor would like to be part of the second round of interviews versus being part of the screening committee.
Okay, I understand. I think personally, I just don't feel like I have the expertise or background to weigh in on this decision in a really fruitful way, and so I would just like to defer to the colleagues of the school committee that do have more of that expertise and that understanding, so I just didn't want to be slotted into a role just because we all needed to have one.
Oh,
I
no,
felt like,
okay.
So other people know much more about this than I do.
That doesn't mean you wouldn't have insight into, could be character. But no, that was very responsive, because last time that was the inquiry, was whether there was a way to get everybody involved. And I think Ms. Keeley really thought about that, because 3 of the members were involved, and then it just felt like when it got to the actual appointment that some people were just more in the loop than others, which was.
And I'm happy not
perhaps
to be,
fine.
I'll say, I'm happy not to be involved too, if people all want to get involved, and then as long as I can get Ethan Manning to be involved, I mean, it's an extension of my office, so. But if that doesn't happen and I want to be involved, it's fine too.
I wonder if Ethan's watching right now. As
I'm
we're
sure
all-
he's
He's
At least I hope he's
glued
not.
to the screen.
No, I saw him at flag football. He's not.
Would it make sense to have the members of the screening committee set up for our next meeting? Should we be thinking about that so that they can meet?
Well, the plan would be that the screening committee members would be announced publicly, like we did the last time, once we have them committed to agree to be part of the committee. So I think we should think about what that screening committee looks like, and the next meeting is 2 weeks from now, so I think that would be ample time to.
Yeah, unlike city council, we have 2 meetings left, so I think that's something we could probably wrap
Yeah.
up before.
I think it would be a nice goal to have that
I think
list
that's
for
very
the next
feasible
meeting.
in the next couple of weeks. I think there's
Great.
specific skill sets, as Brianna spoke to, that we'll be looking for. It will be a similar process to how the screening committee was created for the other position, but obviously looking for different skill sets.
And we have
Great.
time, and we have time too, we just posted, so.
Right.
It's not like we already have candidates.
They're not just pouring in.
Not yet.
I'll do an early plug for Mary DeLay too, maybe she'd want to serve on that, because it's limited time, but she brings a lot of great
Yeah.
background to that.
She probably would.
Yeah.
I bet she would, right.
Yeah.
And that's fine, right? We can have outside.
You can have whatever group
Yeah.
you would like. I got all the guidance on this from the Attorney General's. They just released information in November, but the committee can be whatever representation that you want. So it can be community members, city members, as long as the public body that's being represented doesn't have, a quorum.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Ms. Higgins, I also don't feel like I have the appropriate background, and I would love to have Mary DeLay's expertise, as well as a member or two of the business office. People who will be working very closely with the business manager should definitely be involved.
I would agree with
in
that.
the early stages of the process.
I would agree.
So, any other thoughts?
Yeah, the only other
Questions?
thought
Yeah.
I would have, which I'm sure you've thought of, is someone from another district
who has and maybe this is Mary Delay, but who somebody, often you bring somebody from an impartial person from another district that has a similar position or supervises a similar position, but.
The superintendent has a lot of contacts in this role in other districts that I'm sure we could connect with.
I've found that it's often, it takes time out of their day, but obviously, but I find that when I participated in selection processes where somebody in a similar position is giving input without really a stake in the game, it really is helpful. But again, only if you can find somebody like that.
Mary Delay has an incredible
she does have some
resume.
Also got Paul.
And Paul too.
Paul Szymanski, do you think he might be available as well?
Yeah.
Right. Shaping up.
So I will bring to the next meeting, provided that all of the people, I can bring a list of people that represent a screening committee of the diverse group that we've talked about.
Great.
As part of our process. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I don't know if we want to try to do that warrant now. You're looking through it at the moment, right, Ms. Walker?
So there's a circled number on there,
211.
211,000.
Thank you, Ms. Keeley.
circuit
You're
breaker.
welcome.
There's 211,000 circuit breaker, which is the jump.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Because if you take that out, you
I
come
mean, we've
in.
had 500,000, just 7,000 just seems like a lot. I mean, I know we've had
Right.
500,000 before.
So
Yeah, I'm
for
looking
those
for- I
of you
didn't
who
see
came in late, we actually
right.
did not approve the warrant because there was a question about the amount, which was considerably higher than usual. And so we wanted to take the time to send it around and let people look at it before we voted.
I'm on page 33.
So the
It's on the
dilemma
first
here,
page.
Ms. Walker, is that I could skip.
No, I was looking at the detail.
I could skip finance.
I'm all set, I'm all
and its
set.
policy, so.
I mean, we're coming in at 529 once you take the 211 out.
I'm all set.
And then
Yeah.
on the 21st, we're at 578.
So do you want to, I don't know, do you have the top page or?
Yeah. I'm going to do it again. I've already done it once when we seconded it. I think we just have to vote.
Oh.
I think you're right.
It doesn't go
Even though a
away.
couple people weren't here, is that fine?
We need to take away the motion.
Right, okay.
Motion
Is
on that.
everyone okay with that then? And were there any other things to discuss about the warrants? Okay.
Ms.
then-
Yell, did you get that? Who was first and second?
Did,
I was
Yeah.
well,
first.
I second
Mr. Callahan, read the warrant. Mayor second. So we're going to vote now.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
It's like a motion on hold.
And,
So I have a question.
Yes.
So Brianna and Andrew weren't here, so when you say aye.
oh yeah, that is
participating in
confusing.
this aye or not?
They can still vote.
Yeah, they can still vote.
vote.
Yeah.
I think what you'll need to do when you're doing the minutes is just list it under Finance Subcommittee.
The warrant vote?
Yeah, because we just voted on it now as part of the Finance Subcommittee. However you want to notate that, we didn't actually take the vote when we normally do on the consent agenda.
I think
So-
you can also just keep it on as it was listed in the order and just say the vote was held and voted on once we had a chance to, you could just note that it was taken later in the meeting.
Vote taken later in the meeting? Yeah. Either way, I think is fine. So, Mr. Callahan, anything else you wanted to share from FinCom? Because
Yeah.
we did meet.
We met and primarily spoke about the athletics fees and what the plan is to go over those for next school year. We should go over with Jim Antonelli the full list. There are some missing ones for whatever reason, like boys tennis isn't on the list. So, and middle school is on the list, which doesn't need to be on the list. So we just have to update it for 2025. And that was really about it.
Are we sorry, did you just talk about student activity accounts?
No, this is athletic fees.
Got it.
We didn't even talk about it. We said we want to start talking about that, so we got the list, which we found it has to be changed. And then Antonelli couldn't be there anyway, but he was working with other districts in the Cal to get their comps. So I guess by the next meeting, maybe.
Yeah.
We can we'll get those.
We'll have all the Cape Ann League user fees.
And that next FinCom is December 12th.
Okay.
So I don't know if we'll have that in time for the next school committee meeting or not, but if not, we can have it for the FinCom meeting. Yes?
Can I follow up on my question? So I think at the last meeting, we talked about student activity accounts, maybe having a list of the student activity account balances for us.
Yes, because we had gone through those.
Yeah. So maybe.
Previous meeting.
Yeah, maybe we could, and
Yeah,
maybe
I guess
that's something.
we have to get those from you, Sean.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have a question regarding, for students who can't afford the full fee or.
There is a process for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have any numbers about how many students
That came up.
make use of that?
They come up.
They were going to look into it, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have that.
Okay, no, I'm just curious.
That could be a part of the process and review.
Yeah. Like for any sports, students like, all students participate regardless of their financial.
Right.
Yeah, but we can get that information.
Okay. And the
A lot of
criteria.
it is the free and reduced lunch. Pam may know that in general. Do you know that, Ms. Keeley, the free and reduced lunch number of students in general?
No.
Probably like around 248 is always where it's historically been.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that though, because.
That was a very specific number.
Around 248.5.
I'm thinking percentages. Where it's always.
Yeah. A little over 10%, 10 to 12%, something
It's
like that.
increased a little bit since COVID.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So all set for FinCom?
Yes.
Policy, we have some second reads and some first reads here.
Yes. So we can start with the second reading. So these were items that were, this is out of order in our packet. Okay. Items that we read, that we had a first reading on at the last meeting. First item was KCD, which is public gifts to schools, and you'll see the red line version in your packet noting the changes. I believe we went over this last time. Any questions?
Which one's this, the data and?
Sorry, but public gifts to school, which is KCD, which is out of order. Do you want me to go in the order of the packet? It's just that the order in the packet starts with.
It's different from the order on the agenda, I noticed that.
Yeah. No, I got it.
No, let's do the second reads first.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
All right. Any questions on public gifts to schools?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Like I said, it wasn't in order. That's why.
Yeah, the main change is the clarification related to the superintendent informing the school committee related to gifts received that exceed $2,500, which was previously in our policy, but we clarified the situation through which that, or the process through which that notification would happen. And we also clarified what would happen for groups that have not been regular contributors in the past, or not known entities, and what would happen if it's an anonymous gift. And in those two situations, it would come to the school committee, it wouldn't go through the finance committee. So I move to approve the policy KCD as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you. All right, so the next one is BHE. Language is updated primarily just to eliminate that last paragraph because it's just not what we do. We just simply provide district email addresses to all our public officials, school committee members. So I'll move to, any questions? Sorry. Sorry,
I had a question about one. I can't remember if it was this one or the next one, but there was something in one of these. It's not really about the policy, but in one of these, it was referencing the public records officer. Is that the term?
Yes.
And that person's name would be listed on our website. And I was honestly wondering who that is because it was Phil Littlehale. It's
Right.
like, who is it now?
It's TBD right now.
Right.
But we
It
kicked
is,
in, yeah.
okay.
I saw Sarah Hall's name written down.
But that's a title that we designate, that the district designates. So it doesn't just stay attached to one individual, but it does, the public records office becomes attached to somebody.
Was it this policy or another one?
There is a reference to it in another
Yeah.
part of this.
Because it did say that we would list the name of that person.
Right.
Okay.
And we've been responding as a team anyway, so our public records requests. So we have a email that all public records requests go to.
Okay.
So that is accessible if
Correct.
anyone's using it. Okay, that was my only thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'll move that we approve the policy BHE as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? All in, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, this is totally semantic, but it occurred to me last time when we were talking about like the social media policy, does should suggest something more than recommended? I mean, because if it reads, it's recommended, I mean, last time it was the school committee should have that piece on the end of the email, and Mr. Callen was talking, well, we can apply that to everybody's email. I mean, does should suggest like this is what one should do as opposed to it is recommended?
Yes,
Is the question
should
I
is
have.
like shall.
But if shall is, some of these are on the verge of,
Well, which one, what are you questioning?
well, it was more in reference to that last one, where
The last
there were some
sentence?
suggestions essentially about social media uses, and it should felt strong to me at the time, so it.
Yeah, I think in this one, everything
Members
is.
should use electronic messaging between and among members only for housekeeping purposes as requesting or communicating
Correct.
agenda. I mean, it could happen, and it's not in violation, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I mean, are you asking whether we should change that to shall? I think shall just has a little bit of a stronger legal,
That's a legal thing,
and
yeah.
I think we'd keep it should. It's that, it's not guidance.
That's, I guess that's what I
The
mean.
practice you should be following.
Yeah, so that is the suggestion of should, it's guidance.
Yeah, and
as
it's not
opposed to-
really a suggestion, it's like you should
Okay,
be
that's
doing
what I was trying to
this.
clarify. Yeah.
But it's not a suggestion, and it's
Okay,
not a
thank you.
shall,
Yeah.
so it's like somewhere in between. So hopefully that helps.
It does.
Okay.
Are we good then? Any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Okay, the next, second reading is EHAA, which is District Security Relating to Technology, and this is a new policy, so that's why it says source MASC. Any questions? All right. I move that we approve adoption of policy EHAA as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? Yes.
All right. The last paragraph, we direct the superintendent to develop and maintain an effective district data protection system, blah, blah, blah. Does that already exist, Sean?
Yes.
Is that something, I don't care to read it, is it something somebody could find if they wanted to?
The procedures for that?
Yeah, like
I
that
think
standardized.
Yeah, I think it's in our acceptable use policies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's Mike Morse and our tech team, making sure the data, student data is protected.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a relevant question, Mr. Callahan, considering what just happened with City of Providence school system, so it might be something be worth making sure we have in place.
We definitely have.
Yeah, I have confidence in the superintendent.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye. All right, so the items for first reading. All right. First one is EHB, which is data and records retention. This is a new policy being recommended per MASC guidance. It's already consistent with what we do, so it's just reiterating what we already do.
This is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, the public
Yes, okay.
records, yeah.
Yeah, so this is just a first read, right, but it does say,
Yep.
yeah, district designated public records officer, contact information for this position will be placed in a prominent position on the district website. I just wanted to make sure that that was happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
I mean, the person's not there, but
Right.
people.
But there's an email
There's an
there, and
email.
someone will read
Correct.
it and
Yeah,
respond.
they can click on
It's
the
a way to
email
get in
and send
touch.
the request into the district.
Anybody have any questions on this one? Okay. Next one is IJNDB, which is use of technology in instruction. And also, this is a new policy, so it's just guidance on why we incorporate technology in instruction and overall sort of framework guidance. Any questions? Okay. JICJ is student use of technology in schools, also a new policy. I think one of the things that's helpful here is just reiterating, some of the use of technology shall be done in a respectful way. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is sentence number 3, paragraph number 3. There's no expectation of privacy in student use of district's digital resources. I think that's an important reminder, particularly now that we're trying to encourage more use of iPads and things like that.
In that second paragraph there, the reference to the district code of conduct, is that embedded in the school handbooks? Okay.
Yep.
So that's good. It just reinforces, again, the guidelines that we have set at the different schools.
All right, and that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Nice and easy.
And I think we're going to meet one more time this year in December. We have a few more policies to go through.
Okay. Great. So yeah, we'll take these last 3 for second read at the next meeting, and
Yep.
then do you anticipate having some?
I don't,
some
actually,
more?
now that, after I
Or
said that, I think.
Probably not at the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think.
Not at
we'll
our
have-
next meeting.
No, we won't have any. And I think, we'll have to look at our list again. I don't know that we actually have any that are pending. We have a few that.
I think a couple,
Yeah, that the staff are discussing, so.
Okay. Mr. Boger, any updates for communications?
Communications, we're meeting on Thursday, and we invited the city council. There are some city council subcommittee meetings, so some people have already suggested they can't make it, but would like to, which is a good sign. The superintendent and assistant superintendent are invited as always, but not obligated to come. We'd love to see you, but please take an evening off if you can afford to. And then we're meeting again on December 19th, so.
Great. So, did you talk to Mr. Cameron about any kind of posting for city council?
We've not,
For
but I'm
this
talking to
meeting?
him, I'm meeting with him tomorrow morning, so I can do that.
Okay. Well, I know, well, let's see, what's the timing? Yeah, so it would need to happen tomorrow. Because if they want to be unrestricted in who can come and participate, they would need to have it posted, right? Like,
Yeah, that's
we
what
wanted
we'll
general
do.
government to,
We'll
because
do the finance
that
thing.
happened to us when we went to their budget and finance. We did it as a joint posting so that we could all participate if we wanted to.
I do think that is something I thought of when I saw your email, but I think that's something that's up to the council president to decide.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
But,
No, it's a question for
I
him.
mean, practically speaking, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen this week, but
okay.
yeah, that's great.
So, but what does that mean, though, in terms of their participation in our meeting if it's not posted for them?
They can't be a quorum.
Yeah.
They can only have, yeah.
But what about the general government? That's what I'm confused about, is with their committees. Like, does that mean that like, if everyone from general government wants to come, they can't? Or they can come, but they
Not
can't
everybody
speak?
can talk.
Then only one person can speak,
Well, that's up to Ed.
because 2 is a quorum.
It is up to
Three.
Ed. I mean,
Ed's gonna have to deal with
it's
it.
up to the council president.
Yeah, okay. Well, just so that he's aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They met tonight, but maybe that's just something down the road, you coordinate one of their meetings. I mean, sometimes general government
Okay.
doesn't meet
Yeah, I
regularly, so
mean-
it might be easier to do if it's a joint.
Yeah, I think we thought it was just important to kind of keep suggesting that we'd love to talk and to
Keep the lines of communication
Yeah.
open.
We also wanted to keep it on our turf.
Yes, yeah.
Not in, I'm
I
not
don't blame you.
saying that in a disrespectful way, but I felt like we would be the hosts.
Oh, I agree. I just think if they posted it for general government, then
Yeah,
they would
yeah.
all be welcome to come and participate.
totally agree.
So we'll see.
Totally
We'll
agree
see
with
what
you.
happens.
Yeah.
Okay. we're ready for superintendent's report.
All right.
Wake up.
I'll be quick. I don't want to, I saw a lot of the work that the teachers that you saw here tonight with the data meetings and team. It's just incredible, I guess, collaboration that I'm seeing throughout the district. I want to thank Ms. Furlong and Dr. Abrams setting up data protocols where teachers actually have a lot of feedback. So that's been wonderful. I had the opportunity to attend the Wall of Fame. Patrick McNiff, football, I think 1982. McAniff. And Harley Davis is basketball.
Harley was awesome.
Yeah, they won the state title. So what was really nice, talk about the tradition, but also the legendary coaches, Coach Stalin and Coach Lucy, and the impact that the educators had on them as adults. And it was really, it was a nice night. I just want to mention a couple of things. The fall play, Badger, if anyone had an opportunity to see that. The theater and performing arts, I think the resources that we've put into that, the acting was like incredible. You think like middle school plays, you kind of go to like see Shrek. They're like drama,
There's a strong history there,
Yeah.
Superintendent. There were some
Bringing
good
it
middle.
back, and-
Yeah, that's awesome.
And every day I have the middle school marching band going around my.
They were playing when
Yeah,
I came
you were there, right?
to meet
So
with you. I was like,
it's a
"What?"
good sign
They were
that-
playing Christmas
So all
music.
these years we're bringing back
Yeah,
theater.
that's
and-
great.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
I'm really excited about that. Veteran Day ceremonies, amazing throughout the district too. The Knock Middle School had a town, like kind of a town meeting in the classrooms with the veterans. And then there was a group assembly, very powerful. It was great. And then on the Friday at the Bresnahan, the families that had, their parents or caregivers or relatives were honored. Anytime you can bring an entire elementary school together in the gym was 600 kids.
Wow.
And they was singing, and it was awesome. And what was really nice is Jim Sullivan did a story. So he followed the veterans into the cafeteria, and then he was talking to them, and some of them fought in Vietnam, and they had tears in their eyes for our youngest, hand over their heart and singing all those songs. So it was really powerful. Ed Foundation Lighthouse auction was on the 9th, another successful venue. Mr. Boger, Mr. Callan, and the mayor were there. Obviously, he has allowed them to host it at City Hall the past few years, which was great. Another community event was the Community Service Breakfast Committee. That was another group really, I guess, creating support and resources for those that are less fortunate, and the work that they do was incredible. Ian, I'm not going to steal any thunder from Ms. Shaw, but we did. You want to talk about CPAC? Because we did have. Are you on the list?
I do have her down for a
That's-
follow-up on
And I'm not
that.
gonna.
Coming right up.
All right, so that's some good news there, but that's a quick superintendent's report for everybody.
Great.
A lot of great things happening.
Yeah.
So I'll try to be brief. I know it's getting late, but I wanted to give everyone an update from the MASC conference. I was, as you know, I was the delegate at the assembly to go over the resolutions, and incredibly, all 10 resolutions passed. After, I had kind of low expectations after what had happened the year before, but they were on it. The people who were running it had some changes to their process to make it more efficient and more productive, and I was impressed. 2 of them were amended, so I just wanted to detail that. Number 1, Resolution 1 about development of an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test. Of course, this was post-vote, and so one piece was removed, the part that says, therefore be it further resolved that MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately. That piece was removed, and then it was approved without that. So really, it's just the parts about evaluating it, taking a closer look at making sure that it's checking for biases, and urging Massachusetts to develop alternatives to high-stakes MCAS tests. So that was all there, but they just removed the moratorium piece. And then the other one that was amended, trying to find a number, it was, I think, 7, the one about Chapter 70, and I thought this was pretty interesting, actually. I made some copies so you could see the amendment. This was from a school committee member from Haverhill, actually. I don't have enough for everyone, because my printer ran out of toner right before the meeting, but I already gave you one, Mr. Boger, so you can pass them that
I have
way.
one
You can
too.
take one. And then Superintendent, you can have one, and Ms. Shaw. And
I already have one.
You already have, she already has it, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this was very popular. Everyone was quite happy with this. Instead of just saying, it would be great if you could adjust Chapter 70 to, adjust it to catch up with inflation, this they call it strengthening amendment, actually spells out how it could be done in 2 years. So I just wanted to give you a copy of that. Any questions about the resolutions? Of course, these are non-binding, but it's just a way for us to have some impact on the legislature. All right. I also wanted to just give you some quick highlights of some of the sessions I attended. It was very impressive. There's just a lot of expertise there, and a lot to learn. So Mr. Boger and I actually went to one called Securing Top-Notch School Finance Leaders, which was great. We got a lot of great information on how to do that. Right at the beginning, they said, raise your hand if you're going to need a new school business official in the next 2 to 3 years. So I raised my hand. I said, how about 2 to 3 weeks? But it was helpful. It was very helpful. And we can elaborate on that more later. I also went to one on sustainability that was hosted by the Falmouth Public Schools, and they are a green ribbon school, which I guess is, an award and a designation that they've earned. It was really interesting to hear all the work they're doing around sustainability. Like, the schools are sustainable, the kids are involved in it, it's linked to the curriculum. We are doing a lot of what they're doing, which is what I thought. I mean, maybe like 80% of what they're doing. I think the key difference is they have a staff member who's a coordinator, who's kind of looking at the big picture of everything, which is probably not in the cards for us right now. But there could be some interesting, I see some partnership potential maybe with Falmouth. They take advantage of the fact that they're a coastal community. They talked a lot about Woods Hole, Ms. Shaw. We both have spent time there. As the scientific community there is very engaged because, of course, their kids go to the Falmouth Public Schools. And so the parents, a lot of it is volunteers, parents volunteering their expertise in the scientific community. They had some really cool things, like they have outdoor classrooms, which are really just they're like tent structures. You weren't in that one with me, were you? I could get some pictures, but they indicated that they're pretty weatherproof, these tent structures, and then underneath they're either stumps or picnic tables where kids can sit, and so they encourage teachers to take their kids outside. So I thought having outdoor classroom space was cool. They have pollinator gardens, but a lot of the stuff we're doing, the place-based learning, the composting, other sustainability efforts. They've got solar panels. So anyway, it was just cool to hear some of that potential.
And they're the Clippers.
And they're the Clippers, yes, yes. That came up, I was so excited by that, yeah.
Hedge clippers, though.
Yeah.
Different mascot.
They're not the originals.
I also went to a session on gifted and twice exceptional learners, and it's probably hopefully no surprise to anyone here. Massachusetts ranks 48th for addressing gifted learners. So, it was presenters from MAGE, which is the Massachusetts Association of Gifted Education. So, everything was very aspirational and not necessarily things that we can do, but I was excited to hear that DESE has recently hired a gifted coordinator. So it's glacial, but there is some progress towards prioritizing gifted education. So I thought that was exciting. That's it for me. Would either of you like to share about things that you learned or?
Sure. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
the Profoundly Gifted seminar was fascinating. And I guess it broadly speaks to, we, like a lot of districts, do sort of subgroups really well. I didn't realize that the state was lagging so profoundly in that regard. So that I learned a lot. But it brought up a lot of the conversations that are sort of tandem to what we were talking about earlier, which is what is the best way to move a district forward? Do you focus on specific subgroups, whether it's special education or these kids that are particularly gifted? How do you track them, or do you focus on sort of raising the bar from the middle? So that was really good. There was one on trends in collective bargaining, which was quite powerful to hear. School committee perspectives and legal perspectives on that, given the current environment, and also on special education, which also was quite legal. It was just case studies of what's come out. One of them was quite fascinating, talking about with the MCAS. Requirement of graduation being lifted, I think it goes into effect like December 5th or something like that. So the lawyer was suggesting that some of these cases that get up to that level, they're now literally going to be able to hand over a diploma on that day, which was kind of inspiring regardless of where you fell on that spectrum and that vote. That was nice to hear that some of the cases, in the 700 cases of kids that don't graduate because of the MCAS, some of these folks that have really high challenges will, in fact, graduate instantaneously. So that was good.
Yeah, I always get a lot out of these conferences. I didn't go as long this time, but I'm so grateful that the members were there with me. But the one session I think that I found most interesting was on special education financing. And it was mostly led by the special ed finance director of Lexington Public Schools. They have a dedicated position that she claims self-funds, and her job is just to do the special ed financing aspect of their business management. So she said there are 5 other districts in the state that have a similar position. I found it really interesting. It's not necessarily something we can do right away, but she said they talked about it for a while. I think her position's been in existence for 15 years. And I'm happy to share. They provide all the PowerPoint presentations. She had a lot of detail in her presentation, so I didn't take many notes because they share all the presentations after the fact. So I'm happy to circulate that around. But it did sort of make me think could be an interesting idea. So, but other than that, yeah, just some of the I went to one on procedures, school committee procedural stuff, and we attended our district sort of roundtable, and they're going to try to have some virtual brown bag stuff coming up for our district, which is division, which is Division 1, coming up. So I strongly encourage folks to try to go. They're really, either this conference or the other conferences they offer throughout the year, very useful.
Thanks. Okay, Michelle, you have some news for us from last week?
Yeah.
There was a meeting, right, last
Yes,
Thursday?
we had a meeting which consisted of a meet and greet with the special ed administrators in each of the schools, and then followed at the end by a vote for co-chairs. I was a little bowled over by how many people were in attendance. There were definitely, I should have done a head count.
How many would you say roughly?
Estimate was 23.
Oh, I was
That's
going
not
to
bad.
say, I was going to say 24 plus.
So it's like Ms. Keeley's estimate.
Yeah, 248, 23.
Yeah, about, okay. So
That's great.
And it was a
That's
good showing for all the parents or family members from all of the, schools. Brad Brooks presented a nice, presentation. Folks were introduced. There was some time for questions, and then people were able to sort of meet with each other. It was great for me. I saw a lot of folks I knew, and got to get caught up on how their kids are doing. So it was, I was a little bowled over. I'm very pleased. The energy was very positive.
That's great
And
to hear.
that made me just say, wow, okay. You know, there is some hope here that we can move forward. And,
That's great.
you know, in a collaborative way.
Do we have 2 people? Do we have co-chairs?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, so we're good. The next event is December 10th, and that is going to be with the Amesbury CPAC. So that's going to be a joint presentation. Oh, they're presenting, but they're inviting the Newburyport folks. So there'll be some collaborative work with other local school districts, which I think is great. Increases people's ability to connect with other people and neighboring communities. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you.
I was pretty excited, yeah.
Yeah, anecdotally, the feedback was very positive, and I
Oh,
think,
good.
I know there's significant challenges in certain sectors, but
Mhm.
again, anecdotally, there is a lot of positive energy out there, and I feel like there's some sentiment that things are stabilizing and moving in the right direction, and that Mr. Brooks is getting
Yeah.
a lot of positive feedback.
That's good. All right.
Mm.
The last thing we had for follow-up was the hybrid meeting setup, which we were going to talk about the last time, Mayor, but you weren't here, so we kind of tabled it for now. Mr. Callahan, maybe you can just remind us where we're at. I know we have the equipment, you've tested the equipment, next steps. Yeah.
Who's running? That's the decision. And the district has to pay the license, the updated license fee that we once had, that we let lapse for
Zoom?
Zoom,
Or-
which is tiny amount, $300 a year or something. So yeah, I don't know who's gonna be running it. It's just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I like other things we've talked about tonight, I think I have January as our
Target?
target to figure that out. So I mean, I'm happy to set up some time with, I mean, I think it has to be something at the school department, but maybe there's a stipend or something that we can come up with, I don't know, but.
So we have the equipment.
We have the equipment.
And we have-
I think,
and we need to do it,
I think
and we
PortMedia is
need to do the
installing
count.
a new board. I have to double check with Sarah, but I think something's getting installed at the senior center.
We may not, that may be wholly independent of their stuff, that's fine, but
Right.
I don't know if we're gonna need it.
Yeah, okay.
Because the test was in that room, which is larger than this and worse sound, so I think we should be fine here as well.
Okay.
And then I have that gear in the back of my car, can I bring it to your office?
Yeah.
I'm driving around with it for weeks. So.
Is it skateboard gear? Or?
I do have skateboard gear in my trunk. No, it's the new owl, which is great, and then that adapter thing that came with it.
Okay.
Cool.
Any questions?
No, I do think we have the capability, we've acknowledged that. I think it's just figuring out the logistics of it, and I do think it makes sense to have the school district take responsibility for scheduling the Zoom for each meeting, so that we aren't relying on school committee members. And then I would just suggest we look at what other departments are doing and what's the city council doing, and just try to mirror that as much as we can.
Yeah, when we get that updated license, we can add, because right now I think only Andy Wolf and I have logins to it, back from COVID. So
Yeah,
we just have to update it and then put the other users on,
Get
Joanne
Mike
or
Morris
whoever it's gonna be.
involved.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you at the city level, individual departments handle their individual meetings. So like the planning department, all the meetings that they're involved with, as far as on a boards and commissions level or other, is handled by planning. You know, city clerk's office handles the city council meetings.
Right.
So.
And in the meeting, the planning director runs the Zoom.
Mhm.
I'm not saying the superintendent has
So
to do
one
it,
thing,
but I'm just
Mayor,
saying.
When you guys do the meetings like that, the ones that PortMedia has nothing to do with, where does that file reside?
Like if someone wants to look up like the
recording link, where is that link linked?
I think they're all archived, but I think they go back in and put that link into.
No, but where
It's a Zoom-
physically
there's
is
a
that
Zoom
file?
cloud. I
Where's
think
that MP4 file that I'm accessing to view? Is it on the city's
I thought-
servers, or is there a
I thought they all got stored on your Zoom account. You think they'd have to download it?
You can choose to do it, like I did it locally and I have to upload it to give it to PortMedia to put on their YouTube. But
Right.
city council doesn't do that.
Right, because PortMedia already has their recording, so
They don't-
I honestly don't know, but like.
Well,
I'm
yeah, we'll
happy-
find out.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All set for that for now? Is there any new business?
My only new business, and I do this every year, is I don't think we're going to meet again before Thanksgiving. So I just want to say that I'm very thankful to the staff particularly, who teach our students very well and do a great job every day and increasingly in difficult situations. So I just hope you pass that along. But also the administration and all that you do to support that staff. And I think we are very lucky to live in a community that we do, and I think a big part of the treasure of our community is the strength of our schools and the strength that, and how that filters out into the community at large, and very happy to live here and be part of that. And also thankful for my fellow school committee members.
Well said. All right, any other new business?
It's hard to follow up.
Yep. How about a motion to adjourn then?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.